Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Welcome. Episode 2 of Office Hours, the somewhat 40K related podcast that I've decided the world needs. Quipsternerd is going to be joining us shortly. There was a tad bit of misunderstanding on the time. Oh, hello, Cryo Cheese, Quietus, Snipbag. What is up, Sir Jacob? I see you're here in chat. Could we get some shout outs, please? I know for the most part we all follow each other already, but we could get shout outs for Snipbag and Cryo Cheese, please. Both of them awesome, awesome, awesome painters. Really, really cool dudes. So and yeah, I think it was some time zone miscommunication. Uh, so Quipster should be ready soon, but you have me for the time being. For those of you who don't remember, yesterday we finished Saint Celestine. That's awesome. Really excited to have her done. But we are going to be going forward. I'm going to be doing my best to keep some of the things that I finish. As much as I want to put Celestine on Instagram, I want this to be hidden. I want this to be a surprise for just one session for Celestine. Kind of. I did the base layers before stream, so she was pretty much ready to go. The only things I did on stream were the streaking grime and the OSL. Missed the end, fell asleep during the streaking grime. Got to lurk for work. Well, thank you so much for lurking, Sir Jacob. And before you go, shout yourself out. Shout yourself out. But yeah, we also we started on some of the Sororitas Rhino bits. Those are going to be relatively simple in their basic color schemes, and then from there uh we're gonna graffiti them up. It's gonna be really fun. Lots of it's gonna be a good opportunity to practice some airbrush stuff. Dang it, Jacob, don't sleep on yourself. All right, I'll do it. I'll do it right now. Quick shout out for you. All right, guys, make sure you get over there and follow Sir Jacob. Let's bring the microphone over for podcast distance. So we're gonna get nice and intimate. We're gonna get right up here on the microphone, just real close, just like, hey chat, how you doing? Doing good? That's nice. Don't worry, this first portion of the podcast is gonna get cut. Steel Raspberry subscribing with Twitch Prime. Ooh. Ooh. Steel Raspberry. Thank you for giving me your Bezos bucks. Really do appreciate it. It's very kind of you. I hope you were having a wonderful morning or evening. As we have found out today, time zones can be a bit confusing. So I'm just going to say, I hope you're having a wonderful time wherever you are and wherever the sun happens to be above your particular portion of the sky. So, are you not using Instagram? Is it not linked to your Twitch? Fix. Snipbag's Instagram is always a good time. And we are drinking from the Harry Potter mug. Don't tell my wife, it's one of her favorites, but I just grabbed it because it was a really big one and I felt like I needed a big mug of tea this morning. How are you today, Steel Raspberry? Thank you again for your Bezos bucks. In fact, in celebration of your Bezos bucks, I'm going to take a second and I'm going to go grab Celestine. I will show you guys right now what St. Celestine looks like. Okay, this isn't going to do it. So we're going to switch really quick over to regular live view. So this is St. Celestine. She is our Iron Maiden. I'm so clever. But this is our Saint Celestine. I even snuck some lyrics from the very beginning of Number of the Beast onto the back of this sheet in my terrible handwriting. So it's woe to you, O earth, for the devil sends the beast with wrath. And then it just goes back into nonsense. But yeah, we have her Gemini that are done as well. I went back in after yesterday's stream because I realized that there was too much white on this side of this wing. It didn't match over here, so I went in this morning and sprayed a bit more blue. So they pretty much match now. And the back of the wings they're pretty much good. So I'm gonna leave those alone. And yeah, I wanted to have a Saint Celestine that looked we're gonna play like magical box in a box in a box. But if you look at holy cow. If you look at this is Saint Celestine, how she's box art painted, which is by no means a requirement. And then here's mine. So I think it turned out all right. And there's your sneak. I won't be posting her to Instagram, and I just grabbed one of the Gemini so you could see that too. We did a little orange OSL for the heat wash coming out of their jetpacks, and then their power swords. And what's up, friendly Pyro? And Pat Wolfington. Hello. Okay. So like I was saying before, we are going to be starting shortly. Quipsternerd is getting set up. There was again some unfortunate cross signals because time zones. Time zones are weird. So I don't know like if I said something incorrectly or if it was just like a scheduling thing that we didn't anticipate. But he will be on shortly. But what we will be discussing today is getting started in Warhammer. Now, I'm barely awake, but I'm here. That's what caffeine is for. At least for me. So I have a big old in true sauce fashion, we have a notepad document here. It's got a ton of info that we are going to be using. English breakfast tea. Green tea, son. Green tea. Always green tea. Always interested to hear other people's experiences with getting started in the hobby. I cut out caffeine a few years ago. Okay, that's fair. I actually, I was the guy who was drinking, okay, so you know how there's the regular can of Monster Energy, and then there's the kind that has like that twist top, and it's about the size of like an oxygen tank. I was drinking 3 of those big ones minimum a day for several years, and that was not good for me. So I quit caffeine as well for a long time. And then I started drinking tea because it calmed me down, and I found it actually had a really good effect on how I handled my ADHD. That the caffeine gave me enough of a stimulant boost to help level me out whereas my medications were usually a little too much. So now, in concert with a non-stimulant medication, I have found that green tea some days, not every day. Your heart must have exploded. Yeah, my blood pressure was pretty high. So it was. Oh, he's ready. Okay. Sorry, Quipster. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He's getting on the call right now. Hey, Quipster, how you doing?
Good. Are we doing video as well?
Yes, we can. We can. Although
Okay.
my face cam is already being utilized by my streaming device, so it won't pull up for me. But we are doing face cam for you if you so desire.
Yes, please. Okay, let me turn on the camera there. And then your stream's Twitch, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I will bring you up on Twitch so I can see you
The most
and your
handsome
beautiful
devil
face.
on the internet has joined us, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Oh, and that
You
all
are
lined up
too kind,
perfectly.
sir.
I didn't even have to do anything. Yes, I am a professional podcaster. Yes.
Outstanding. Just waiting for the advert to go through so I can see your face. But yes. Oh, dude, sorry. Quick apology. I completely screwed up the times for this. I don't know. I thought this was happening at 6 o'clock p.m. UK time, not 2 in the afternoon. So yeah, that's entirely my bad. I
No, it's
apologize.
yeah, it I guess we can just chalk it up to stupid international time zones.
No, precisely.
But regardless, I
Uh,
really appreciate you like even scrambling just being like, "Oh no." And then still like coming on instead of being like, "Well, I'll see you in a few hours." but um
Excellent.
but for those of you who don't know,
Yeah, I suddenly can't hear you.
uh-oh.
Give me a second. Okay, I've just changed around some of the settings,
Can you
so I
hear me?
should be.
Can you
Yes. Okay. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes, you are coming through loud and clear. How chat, how's Quipster coming in? Do I need to turn up his volume? In fact, you know what? I am going to turn up his volume. Whether or not you like it, I'm going to do it.
Whether you like it or not.
All right, perfect. All right,
Mm.
I turned you up, so now your levels are coming in equal with mine.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, cool. And it should sound very crisp because I'm using the cool microphone arm setup.
Yeah, that does look really nice. I am a bit jealous.
I mean, to be honest, this was an absolute necessity. It's getting to the point now where I'm filming so many podcasts and doing so many interviews. God, I sound like. Am I allowed to swear? I don't know if I'm allowed to
Yes,
swear.
yes. This is going
Okay.
up on Patreon, so it's not like we have to worry about like, oh, not for the first 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's hard to sound like, it's hard to not sound like a wanker when you're like, oh god, yeah, so many problems. I'm just doing so many interviews. Oh god, my life is so hard.
Oh, after this, I have to record yet another podcast with my friends and talk about my hobbying and name drop 12 different people. Like, do you know how exhausting this is, Doctor? Do
It
you
is
know?
so hard.
And speaking of those podcasts, for those of you who weren't aware, Quipster is he's part of the Conclave podcast. He has his own fireside chat podcast. Most recently, he did an incredible conversation with Mini Wargaming Dave, which not to say that I want to be a copycat, but I want to be a copycat. And after your conversation with him, I want to have a conversation with him so badly.
Oh, dude.
He's such a cool dude.
Yeah. He is a really nice guy, and it was funny actually. This is my first name drop of the evening. I got a text from Winters after that, and he was just like, "Yeah, no one's ever got as much out of me, Wargaming Dave, as I did in the interview." And I was just like, "Oh my god, wow, that is exceptional compliment. I will absolutely take that." But yeah, very interesting guy. I don't think he was expecting me to take the conversation in the ways that I did, and I do want that celebrity boxing match, Warhammer celebrity boxing match, to happen.
I'd be down for that. I'm a very non-violent person, but if it was for charity, I would do a celebrity boxing match.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the funny thing. Like, it was like I was saying in that interview, the Warhammer community, as it is at the moment, is small enough and full of nice enough people that it's actually quite rare to have any like actual drama between anyone. Like we actually haven't had the Logan Paul like KSI drama yet. Just
Yeah.
because like the smaller community, they kind of everyone knows everyone. So yeah, you don't really have that.
And it's really nice because I mean, coming from like from the perspective, and people talk about this all the time, especially the Twitch miniature painting community. We are so close knit,
Mm.
so interconnected, and it's such a supportive environment that you compare that tiny little portion of Twitch that we inhabit to the overwhelming majority of Twitch, and it's night and day, like kindness versus just outright evil sometimes. And I love it
Yeah,
here. So
absolutely. I mean, oh, sorry, go
oh,
on.
no, I was just going to say, and it's because of this community that I actually felt the confidence to dive into Warhammer, like as
Mm,
far as the painting goes. So
absolutely. I mean, it's really interesting you mentioned that actually because I have recently got a friend of mine into the hobby, you might have seen her on Instagram. Actually, it's Silver Paints, like
yeah,
SYLVA.
she's one of the
Yeah.
like the that shout out train was going. She was one of my people because folks,
Mhm.
if you don't know about Silva, she started how long ago? Like 2 months,
20 days.
20 days. 20
20
days
days.
ago, and she's already doing gridded out freehand wolf heads on her space wolf cloaks. She is
Honestly.
incredibly talented, and it's all thanks to Quipster.
Honestly, like literally, she actually only lives like a 5-minute walk away. So we met, and I was just like, "Oh, I do this hobby? Do you want to come around and have a go?" And she was like, "Yeah, that sounds really interesting." And so she came around, and I showed her how to thin paints. And turns out her housemate actually had a whole bunch of space wolves from when he was a kid. So we were painting the space wolf together. And yeah, like she just took to it. She was just like, "Oh, this is the hobby I've always been looking for," because she has a lot of attention to detail. That's like her big thing, and she wanted to do something creative. And she was just completely taken with the hobby. And I was just like, "Well, you should probably start a hobby Instagram to track your progress." And she was like, "Oh, that's a really good idea." And unlike I think a lot of people who start in the hobby, she has a lot of experience with taking Instagram quite seriously, so she knows how to play the game. And yeah, she's she she texted me yesterday. She gained 400 followers on Instagram yesterday alone.
Yeah, she's
Insane.
didn't she hit 10,000 followers on Instagram or like some
Oh no,
insane
that's
number?
Katie.
That's Katie.
You're thinking about Katie. Yes. Which is Katie again, another woman who knows how to play the Instagram game. Like she was on 6,000 followers organically in 6 months from less than 60 posts, I think, and then joined Tabletop Tactics and hit 10K in 2 days.
Which again, props to her. I watched the big Astra Militarum versus
Yes.
Tyranids game. Watching her curse herself, like she's getting this like this longer and longer title, like the Hive Queen Jinx of tabletop tactics, and like it'll just keep going on and on and on, like a Custodes name.
Oh
So
my god, yes. Actually, let's start some drama. Okay, so Casey's a really good friend of mine, and I know her really well at this point. And I'm gonna say something that I don't think anyone else in the community knows yet. Okay,
give us that
talking of
hot goss.
Custodes, she hates Custodes.
¿Por
I
qué?
know,
¿Por qué?
I know. It's so annoying because like they're my favorite faction by far. And I'm just like, why? It's because her girlfriend, sorry, fiance now, um, really likes them. And basically, she saw them on the website, and she was like, oh, they're just too gaudy. I don't like the designs. I don't like the paint scheme. And so
Neither
there
did
was just
I.
like too much. Wow. Well, and then yeah, here we are.
And that's
And see,
why I
this is the
painted mine
thing.
up this way.
Yeah. And see, this is the thing. Apparently, we were hanging out one day, and she came over and she saw my Custodes because they're all in the. I don't know if you can see it. I'm gonna turn the thing in the glass cabinet here.
Mm-hmm.
Although they're actually not in the glass cabinet, they're in the little box over there. So she saw them in the cabinet, and she was like, "Oh, actually, the black and the gold. That's actually really good. maybe I do like Custodes. And I was just like, yes, I'm beginning to turn you.
Yes, come to the fold. Come to the fold. Actually, the Solar Watch paint scheme for Custodes has to be, for me, one of the most intimidating paint schemes to try to pull
Which
off.
one?
Solar Watch, the primarily
Oh,
white with gold trim, because
yeah.
like
Oof.
getting the white just right, and then like you're going in with gold, which even if you go just off the edge just a little bit and you get a little gold on the white, trying to clean that up,
Yeah.
at least in my experience, I always flub it up. So
No,
that's why I went lots of
100%.
airbrushed greens.
No, I mean you are 100% correct. This is the thing with my Custodes, because they're the black and the gold. Black's really easy to touch up, and so it takes a while, but yeah, it's just so much easier. Oh, hang on a sec. Someone's mentioned me in the comments. Cryo cheese. Yeah, a bit of a year ago, Chris's purple Custodes absolutely inspired me. Ah, dude, that's fantastic. I'm so happy about this.
Yeah, and when I was getting started in Custodes and I was just becoming aware. Wait, hold on. No. We have to go back to that. Were you just drinking a Capri Sun? Were you drinking
Oh,
a
yes.
fruit?
Yeah. This is what is this? This is blackcurrant and apple flavor.
My
I
man.
recently discovered that in Canada and the States, you guys don't have blackcurrants. That's just like a thing.
No, oh God, when I was a young man, and by young man I mean I was like 12. We were in Ireland, and I don't remember what the drink was, but normally it had alcohol in it. But the bartender
Okay.
thought myself and my brothers were, just like cool kids. He wasn't giving us booze. But he made the drink using like seltzer water and black currant like sauce, or like a
Liqueur or
concentrate.
something, I guess.
And yeah, and obviously it was non-alcoholic, but God, I love that.
Oh
And
yeah.
I had the exact same realization when I got back. I'm like, oh, can we get some of that here?
Mm.
My folks are like, no, they don't make that here. And
That's
I
not a
was
thing
very
here.
upset. So we've been talking a lot about, factions like Custodes and Tyranids and Astra Militarum. And these, for again, this the whole idea behind our chat today is I want to try to take because we are essentially calling it now in August. I've been in the Warhammer hobby for 1 year. This is my
Wow.
1 year anniversary. So hooray. And in that 1 year,
Congratulations.
I've learned, thank you. I've learned a lot in that year, but I want to take my experiences, what I think are good ideas and good tips, and put them through the lens of your broader experience, and also the experience that you have actually gotten to take from being involved with, like the folks at DZTV, Katie, Maxine. Like, you've probably picked up little things from them in conversation. So I hope that we together can come up with kind of a no holds barred, dumbed down, the basic of the basic information that we can pass along, because there's a lot of great videos out there already on like how to get started in 40K, but sometimes even those can get a little too overcomplicated for me,
I
and
agree.
I'm a simple man, and this simple man requires a simple explanation. So to start, I had come up with the 3 Ps, of getting started in Warhammer: picking, painting, and playing.
Okay.
So first we
Okay.
pick our faction.
Okay.
And I came up with what I think are super, almost insultingly simple descriptions of each of these factions. So if we can, in one sentence each, sum up these factions. One
Okay.
sentence. So we'll start with Space Marines.
Okay.
You go first.
Space Marines in a single sentence. Okay. Elite, very strong, and honorable. It's
Okay.
almost a list rather than a sentence.
It works. That fits the theme that we're going for here. And I would describe them as the Swiss Army knife that you can make into anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that's actually a much better way of saying that.
Okay, next, the Imperial Guard and/or Astra Militarum.
Oh, they're just normal soldiers. That's just it.
Yep. Army
There's
men,
not even anything to it. Yeah.
and lots of tanks.
Precisely. Yep. I 100% agree.
And now I think this is one that that I'm really excited to hear you try to sum up in a single sentence. Custodes.
I mean, my obvious answer is immediately, obviously the best.
Obviously the best.
Like, just with no question. But if you were going to actually dig into what Custodes are, they are elite philosopher warriors. That is their entire role and purpose. They are philosopher warriors.
Oh shit. Now, like, if you want a selling sentence on a faction, like, if I wasn't already into Custodes, if I was on the fence and someone said, okay, how do you describe this faction? Elite philosopher warriors. My eyebrows go like right up into what used to be my hairline. And
oh, dude, I feel you. I'm getting there too.
Oh, shush. Like,
to be fair,
small children could probably use that hair as like a trampoline. But so for me, Custodes are actually, like, I might be coloring opinions, but they're a great starter army because, and I'm going to go over my sentence, but to clarify, they're a great starter army because, one, it's a minimal amount of models to get like to 2,000 points. And if you paint them in like kind of the traditional gold scheme, like a can of rattle spray and, you know, a few touch-ups here and there, and you're done. So they are relatively easy to paint. So Custodes are the banana boys.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to dig into Custodes at this point a little bit deeper, I would say they can be a very good starting army, but I would actually always start with Space Marines. And the reason for that is because Custodes, I mean, this is me possibly like derailing the conversation immediately. But the way that I look at starting into 40k is I see there being 3 distinct avenues. There's the lore, the painting, and the tabletop. And for me, sorry if I'm like treading over like your notes at the moment.
No, like I'm looking over at my notes. I'm like, well, we were going to talk about that anyway. May as well be now. I'm like, I have the list. Like, it's even covering up my face because I don't need to see my face. I know what it looks like. But but I've got all that right here. So go nuts.
So yeah, I see there being 3 distinct ways. So you've got the lore path, the hobby path of the painting, and the tabletop path. Now, I have friends who just hate painting and they do not read the lore, but they are super into not necessarily the hyper competitive aspect of the hobby, but the very nitty gritty. I want to build a list and I want it to be able to do these things.
The strategy side.
The strategy side, exactly. A really good example of that is my friend Will, one of my good friends from school, known him for 12 years. He has always hated the painting to the point where, I don't know if I've told you this story, but I actually painted his entire 4,000 point Eldari army for him.
Because it pissed you off. Yeah, we talked about that during the charity stream in June.
Yes, exactly. God, it was just so badly painted. I just had to do something about it. But yeah, so Will has always hated the painting and the hobby side, but he's always really enjoyed the playing. And I think it's kind of important to understand that about yourself. And another great example, Helena, Silver Paints. She really, really enjoys the painting to the point where her actual plan of getting into the hobby is she wants to paint one model from every single AOS army to see which one she likes painting the best, and then she'll pick that faction to play as. And I thought that was a fantastic idea because, you know, by painting more and different things, you become a better painter faster.
Mm-hmm. I might actually have to steal that.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. So she's got some really crazy stuff coming up. And I'm just like, oh my God, yes, please do all of these things.
And let's also take a moment to account for a woman who has started painting models 20 days ago has put out more painting content faster than like myself, and I know she's put them out faster than you've put out your Black Templars tutorial video. Not to like, this is the closest thing I can get to drama is like we're sitting here like release the Quipster cut, like release the dang tutorial, because I'm actually about to start the, like, we were having the conversation about my my secret project, which I'm talking about live, where I'm giving a model to each of the members of the Play On team. Shh, don't tell them. And for Space Marine Steve, I'm doing Black Templars, and I'm kind of like holding off on doing the conversions for that because I'm like, Quipster's going to release this thing, and I'll know how to paint him like his because it looks really cool. And I'm just waiting, man.
Dude, it's
like, if
so
for
simple.
anyone, do
I
it for me.
Tell you now.
Go on.
It's literally just okay. So there's one thing a lot of people out there don't know. You may know this at this point. So the Chaos Black spray is a slightly different color and consistency or finish to the Abaddon Black paint. So what you do is you spray everything black, and then you paint it Abaddon Black on top of that, just so that if you have to do any touch-ups, it doesn't look patchy. Then it's literally just a case of you paint the pouches, I think Rhinox hide. Yep, Rhinox hide. Then you paint all the armor joints, Iron Warriors, or any kind of silver. You paint the flat panels on the shoulders, first Grey Seer, and then Ulthuan Grey on top. For the Ulthuan Grey, you do 3 thin layers, just to make it. Otherwise, it ends up being splotchy. You don't want that. Then Corn Red on the outside of the shoulders. So with Black Templars, the outside of the shoulder trim denotes if they are close support or like anything else. The close support ones have the red shoulder trim. Everything else doesn't. So for the red shoulder trim, it's just Corn Red, Agrax, highlight with Evil Sun Scarlet. Same recipe for the guns, the eye lenses. It's the same way I paint gems. So first you paint it black, then big dollop of Calvin Green, then inside, oh no, not green, sorry. Corn Red, then inside that dollop of Evil Sun Scarlet, inside that a dollop of, I've got the orange here, Fire Dragon Bright, and on the other side you do a dot of White Scar. And then you just edge highlight all the bits you want to edge highlight with Eshin Grey, and then do a matte varnish on top. You're done. That's it.
That is a completely different approach than what I was going to do. I was going to do a significant gradation of like a very strong zenithal highlight of black and white with obviously a nice gray midtone, and then I was going to airbrush a layer of Black Templar contrast paint over it because it would act as a filter, so I'd have a lot of variation. It would still be black, but you'd have like huge color variation, I would assume. So that's how I was going to do it.
I mean, at least your way sounds way cooler than mine. You should definitely do that.
We'll see what happens. So to bring it back around to our list, so describe Sisters of Battle in a sentence.
Oh, it's easy. There's just warrior nuns.
Yes.
Nuns with guns. It's literally all they are.
Very angry nuns with guns. Grey Knights.
See, Grey Knights are an interesting one.
I call them the Popes of Nope.
See, for them, they have this really strong knightly aspect to them. They were all the personal heraldry, a little bit like Black Templars. So for them, it would have to be Psychic Knights. That would have to be it.
Shit,
Psychic Knights of the Round Table. That's it. Yep.
I mean, I'd read that comic.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It's like, okay, so we're going to give Arthur and all his knights power armor, psychic powers, and then they're going to go fight demons. You guys cool with that? Okay, we're going to go watch that.
Yeah. Yes, that's the other part. Demon hunting psychic Knights of the Round Table. There, that's it. Done.
Selling point if I've ever heard one. Okay, AdMech.
Ooh, AdMech. That's an interesting one. Steampunk techno engineers. Yeah, steampunk techno engineers. That's it.
And
Yeah.
like, see, the best
'Cause-
part is I'm sitting here like, okay, I'm thinking along these lines, and then you essentially say the sentence that I was about to say. So I'm like, well, I've got nothing to add. And now like that dovetails nicely into knights, both, you know, chaos and loyalist.
So for knights, okay, for knights you just have to go Pacific Rim but smaller.
Okay, yeah, 40K meets Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, basically. Although one thing that bothers me about knights and titans in general is, so I don't know if you've seen Pacific Rim.
Oh,
But,
I have a Guardians of the Galaxy poster behind me, but like right over here is a Pacific Rim poster. Pacific Rim is one of my favorite movies.
Fantastic. Second one, not as good.
No.
First one, absolutely fantastic. But we don't realize that though the Jaegers are actually bigger than most Titans.
Oh yeah,
like, quite significantly. And like when I found that out, I was just like, oh no, I thought this was the same scale. Like the
they're like Warlord Titan size.
No, they're bigger.
They're bigger than
They're
Warlord
like,
Titans? Oh
yeah, they're
shit.
like Imperator class Titan size.
I didn't know there was one bigger than a Warlord. So I learned something today.
Have you seen the animation on YouTube for Hell's Reach?
Yes.
By Richard Buck. Yeah. The Titan in that is an Imperator class.
Oh,
Titan.
with the giant cathedral on its back?
That's the one. That's the bigger it's the one up from that.
Oh, I thought that was a Warlord class Titan. My bad.
But yeah, no, I think Pacific Rim, but smaller. I think that's going to be the thing for knights.
Okay, I can dig it. All right, now we're gonna get into chaos. So Chaos Marines.
Ooh.
Just blanket Chaos Marines.
Oh, this is a tough one because do you emphasize the corruption of it, or do you emphasize the rebelliousness of them?
Not to color your like what you're gonna say, but my my one sentence description is they are Space Marines. So that same toolbox, like, you know, multi-tool sort of approach, but evil. In an oversimplified sort of way.
You could, with them, say the Swiss Army knife, but with more demon powers.
Yeah, you don't see Space Marines summoning demons, but the Chaos ones definitely can.
Not in this edition, you don't. Not so much the case previously.
Really? Like, okay, I need a tangent on this because again, this is where previous knowledge meets limited understanding. So
yeah, I actually only found this out 3 days ago or something. But it used to be the case in, I think, 6th and 7th edition that Space Marine Psychers could have access to a number of different psychic disciplines, one of which was the demon summoning one for some reason. And so, yeah, if you were playing Space Marines, there was a point at which you could summon demons. It was just like, why is this a thing? This is bizarre.
Well, if you make them Imperial, like, demons, because they're lore-wise, you have the Legion of the Damned. You have, like, Saint Celestine could be argued to be a demon. Any living saint could be seen as an Imperial demon.
Whoa. A greater demon.
Yes. The demon prince of the Imperium is Saint Celestine. But like, I would think it'd be really cool to have that sort of scenario where you're like a Space Wolves rune priest, and you do some summoning thing to like Bamf, and then Saint Celestine shows up, and you just put Saint Celestine on the table. That'd be a really interesting. Like, that's how I'd do it. Like, oh, you summon demons. Okay, here's some of my Legion of the Damned, which barely missed the cut for my very first Space Marine faction. I was going to do Legion of the Damned.
Oh, how would you have done that?
A lot of green stuff and a lot of skulls.
Interesting. That could have worked out really well. That would have been a massive pain in the ass to do because you would have had to convert literally every single model.
Yep, which is why I ended up going with the custom faction where all I had to do was a head swap with the 3D printed horned helmet.
That's entirely fair enough.
So, and speaking of demons, Chaos Demons are their own faction. So,
Yes. I mean, they're just demons.
blood, claws, and magic.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you say to someone, like, oh, yeah, demons, I think everyone has a very distinct image of what, like, the Judeo Christian image, what demons are, like, in their minds. Like, if you say the devil, immediately what you're thinking of is, like, a greater demon of corn, basically. So I think that's very easy to explain to people. Like, yeah, they're demons. They're out of this world. They like exist on this level of existential horror. Well, the one thing I've noticed in the way that we're both we're talking about these different factions is that I think coming at it a little bit more from the lore perspective, and I think you're coming up from it a little bit more from the tabletop perspective, which I think is quite interesting.
Yes, and in that way, we're actually covering the bases for the players because ultimately they can look at the models and make that painting decision for themselves. But seeing from a tabletop perspective, where like you would describe knights as minimal units and they're like individually very very strong. So you'll have a 2,000 point army with like 5 models in it,
Mm.
and you just got these big robots, but you're talking about how like Titans are these gigantic war machines where they have like, is it just one or are there several individuals who like their entire being is connected to the machine, kind of like how a dreadnought is a space marine in a sarcophagus.
Yeah. So a, a knight is essentially a big mech war suit piloted by a single individual. But the really interesting thing when it comes to knights and titans and all this kind of stuff is the way that they bond with their mount, with their knight or titan. I don't know if you've read into this at all in the lore.
No, the only experience I have with it is because like I know there's the Canis Rex Titan model that
Mm-hmm.
has like a dude walking away. I'm like, oh, that's the pilot. But when I was watching Hell's Reach, there was like someone like just stuck in a tube of amniotic fluid. And I just thought
Yes.
that's what it was. Like similar again to how a dreadnought for Space Marines is again, it's a much smaller than a Titan, but it's a robot with a metal, what they call a sarcophagus, where after a Space Marine has been severely damaged, they they put them in these things, connect them up to a bunch of hoses, so essentially their brains control the giant robot. Their senses, their body is the robot when their fleshy bits are, floating in a tank.
Yeah, so it's funny we mentioned this. I've literally just finished reading the book Titanicus by Dan Abnett, and they go into the nitty gritty detail of like this is how Titans work. And so yeah, it's really interesting because um, essentially a knight, you have to think of it like a giant suit of armor, basically, and these knightly houses they look at their knights as sort of a cross between the way a medieval knight would look at his horse and his armor. If you put those two concepts together, that is what they consider their knights to be, because they call them their mount, or their armor and this kind of thing. And whereas a titan, you have to think a little bit more like a submarine, uh, but with it's very small, it's very cramped, it's got a very tightly knit crew, who know the Titan inside and out, and they know each other inside and out. And the sort of big difference there as well is that the princeps, or the one controlling the Titan, is obviously in this amniotic fluid tank. And the reason why Titan princeps and a knight pilot are so important in the Imperium is because I don't know how much you know about machine spirits. Is
Uh,
that if how
as
much?
far as I understand, like they're artificial intelligences, but the Imperium just doesn't want to admit that.
To a degree, yes. But also there's a biological component because a lot of human technology is based around using people's brains for the computing power of it,
Hmm.
which means that technology kind of ends up with a bit of like a personality based on like the brain that they're using for the processing power. And so every, big your Titan or ship or whatever has this machine spirit. And especially for Titans, that machine spirit needs to be tamed. And that can only be done by very, very, very certain, very strong-willed individuals. And so that makes Titan princeps super important. Like, they will move heaven and earth to get a fallen Titan princeps back, because they're so important. It's like not 1 in a million for these guys, it's 1 in like 100 million that person that is strong enough to control the will of a Titan. So yeah, it's like a really big deal when someone is found that can control this Titan, and that's why they like husband certain like bloodlines and stuff.
When you were saying like it was 1 in 100 million, I was like, who could I imagine? Who do I know, like quote unquote, know of, that would be, in my eyes, someone who even unexpectedly would probably have significant control over a Titan? And weirdly, and feel free to disagree, but I think Winters would make a Princeps. I think he low-key has a certain force of will behind his actions that people just kind of fall in line to.
See, I disagree. I don't think Winters would. And the reason for that is because I think Winters, well, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe. But I can actually give you a better candidate who I know 100% would be an outstanding Titan Princeps. Stephen Box.
Oh, shit, yes.
100%. 100%. Like,
Stephen Box from Vanguard
like, oh.
Tactics, folks. Vanguard Tactics is another YouTube channel. They actually, didn't you guys have like a big, was it live streamed or did you video record where you guys played a bunch of games against each other? The Deployment Zone team and the Vanguard team?
Yes. So basically, Liam from DCTV became really good friends with Stephen Box. And now, Stephen Box and Vanguard Tactics have started producing content for DCTV. And as part of that, Liam wanted to start doing a lot more live streaming, a bit like Tabletop Titans. Because, the guy is very busy. He's at a very high management level at Rolls-Royce. And he was like, I don't have time to edit. So live streaming was the way to go. And so Steve was just like, because I know him well enough that I can call him Steve. I'm really privileged that fact. But Steve was, yeah, I know, right? So Steve was just like, well, okay, why don't you guys come down and use the Vanguard Tactics studio to do your live stream bat reps? And Liam was just like, dude, Alex, you got to come down. We're going to do this. And so it was from DCTV, me, Brom, and Liam. We went down. Brom was playing the game. I was on the camera. Liam was on the deck, changing all the different camera angles. And Stephen Box was playing a game with Brom. And so yeah, we've got this thing that once a month, every month, a bunch of us are going to go down to the Vanguard Tactics studio and film a bat rep to be streamed on deploymentzone.tv.
Check it out, y'all. So I know I will be. So
yeah, man.
Our mid discussion, commercial break, so to speak. And I do apologize, like everybody, this is long form. I by no means am going to railroad a conversation. I feel that the best tips, the best tricks come from organic conversation on a topic. You can sometimes find your way roundabouts to a hidden nugget sitting in the back of your brain that if we had just been sticking to a very distinct regimented narrative structure for this conversation, we wouldn't have gotten to. So my apologies, but I'm having a great time, and I think Quipster is too. But the next, and I promise we're now hitting the halfway point, because when it comes to picking your faction, not getting into the fact that there are specific named groups of Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, and so on, that get their own books that are like with their own unique units. And without even worrying about that, there are 18 different factions in 40K for you to pick from a lore perspective, each with a very rich backstory and lore, tons of books about them. And they all play, for the most part, very uniquely, for the most part. So when we're going through these lists, remember that and we will get to, there are ways and tools to help mitigate the risk of like, well, what if I pick a faction that I think looks cool, but I end up not having fun playing? Those sorts of worries. We'll get to that in a moment, but rest assured, there truly is something out there for everyone. So next, Necrons.
Ooh, undead in space. Undead Egyptians in space. That's the one.
That's what I was thinking too. Like Egyptian
Yep.
robots that want these dang kids off their lawn.
Absolutely. Oh, actually, since we're here, since we're on Necrons, have you read The Infinite and the Divine yet?
Oh, I listened to the audiobook. It was so good.
It's so good. It's so funny. I love the imagery. So, okay, listeners or people who are watching this, there's a really funny scene. This isn't a spoiler, between the two main characters. And the whole point about these two main characters is that they're essentially like scholars, like the historian and the scientist. And there's a bit where they're just hitting each other, and they like one of them's like casually commenting like, you know, if we were actually still in our organic bodies, this would be hilarious to watch because we are just so bad at this. And they're
Yes.
literally just like
Yeah, there is a line specifically in the book where they're like, you know, like, were we in our flesh bodies, like you said, this would have been like pathetic to watch because we were both so weak. But now, like, he's throwing a punch that like barely misses the other one's head and like smashes into a wall and like breaks things apart. And so it's like giving super weak anemic nerds like superpowers. And
Oh yeah.
someone asked me to describe this book again, like, you know, it seems to almost be a theme now, but in a sentence. And I said, two immortal robot nerds trolling each other for millennia.
Yeah, that's literally it.
And it is, and on top of that, it is a really good read. And if you get the audiobook, it's like very well narrated. Very well narrated. So highly recommend that one. So I'm doing Necrons as well. Like behind me, we have the Silent King that I commissioned from a friend of mine, and yeah, he's and the best part is he's like an award-winning, like Golden Demon award-winning painter. So
oh my word,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
that is cool.
He's the same guy who makes the paints I use. He has his own paint brand.
What?
Yeah, he created his own paint line. They're called Cuttlefish Colors. If someone do Cuttlefish in the chat, I have a discount code with them. I am, like I said, I am sponsored by them, but I really like these paints because they're semi-transparent, so they're really good for wet blending, layering, all that jazz. So I really like them for that reason, and especially because I can airbrush with them without any thinners. Like they're perfect just to go right into an airbrush. So, haha, hashtag sponsored content. So next up we have the Tau.
Tau. Okay.
You're not allowed to use the word communist.
I know, literally. So it kind of bothers me when people say stuff like this because, like, my undergrad was in politics and international relations, and my master's was in global political economy.
Holy
so
shit.
People call them like, thank you. There's a lot of words in those, so it sounds impressive.
No, I was a history major with a minor initially in college. I was a history major with a focus in pre-law and a minor in political science. So, and then I switched to being, then I became an art major. So it was, it all went down the toilet. But either way, I get and appreciate everything you've accomplished. So please carry on. Sorry.
Thank you.
I nerded out there for a second. Like, ooh, big words.
Outstanding. But yeah, no, it bothers me when people are just like, oh, they're space communists. It's like, no, they just kind of live in a caste-based post-scarcity economy. Like that's just what that is. It's not really communism as these people are describing. And really, more than anything that, it's actually based on a lot of Japanese culture. So if I were going to describe the Tau, I would say probably just Japanese mech suits. Like that is what I would say because that is essentially their whole deal.
It really upsets me that you keep doing this because what I was going to say was Tau are the closest thing 40K will ever get to Gundam.
Oh yeah, so true.
Which are Japanese robots.
Yeah,
And I
I
actually
will say
just
actually.
finished painting. Come here, you little
Oh, what do
bastard.
we got?
This is the one I did for Town Nick. I finished it. So, I mean,
Ooh,
the focus might not be working, and I can't see my own face, but went with some red and white, a little bit of blue OSL, and I had no idea what this model
nice.
was. I just got it for $30 on eBay, and someone's
It's
like, "Oh, that's a Cold Star Commander." I'm like, cool.
yeah.
And I'm like, "What are the weapons?" And they're like, "Oh, those are the flamethrowers." I'm like, "This thing's got 4 flamethrowers on it." And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "On a Tau?" I'm like, "That's a terrible choice." But
Yeah. Well, okay, oh god. Okay, I've got to say this now, before I get myself into any trouble. So I recently was made a playtester for the game. Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, it's really fucking cool, man. So I have seen everything, like every codex that's coming up, every every new rule. Like I read all of it.
Okay, so you don't have to
So I
reveal
know everything.
anything. I want you to, but you don't. You
I know you
obviously
do.
can't. You obviously can't. But I just want you to raise your eyebrows by a millimeter if the
Hmm.
creations of bile is even mentioned. The eyebrows didn't move. Damn it.
I can't even do that. Like,
Okay, fair
but
enough.
what I can say is I'm gonna have to like very very carefully word this because I did have to sign an NDA
Hmm.
which said you can't talk about fucking anything.
Yeah, and I
So
don't want you to lose this. So don't feel
yeah,
under any circumstances do not feel pressured, even though it's on like some little Twitch streamers like pseudo podcast. Like I don't want you to get in trouble. So don't feel under any obligations to share anything. The joke I was making about the creations of bile is only because once I finish the sisters, my Custodes, and then my AdMech, I am going to do a creations of bile chaos army because
I
Fabius
think
Bile is the man.
that is a fantastic model, and I think Fabius Bile has. Have you read his books actually?
I'm actually almost done with the Primogenitor book, and if there are more in that
Uh,
series, I'm going to be continuing it.
Absolutely fantastic book series. I recommend everyone in the chat read those. They're also actually quite funny.
Yes,
Like just out of nowhere for no reason. They're actually just really humorous.
Fabius is a like I mean when you have a space marine looking at a keeper of secrets, where if you guys go on GW's website or just Google 40K keeper of secrets, that is a big scary demon with 4 arms and claws and swords and like a cow face, and it's just really intimidating. And one of them rips itself out of the warp and starts being like, "Oh, Fabius Bile, like like you're my little pet. I'm gonna do," and he's like, "Screw you, man. I don't even believe you exist. You are a figment of our
Yeah,
collective unconscious." And the demon doesn't know how to respond to that. Like it's
yeah,
just like
literally. What? You can't be an
that.
atheist. I'm literally a demon standing in front of you.
That's not in the script. What is this? Like everyone in the room is freaking out because of just the presence of this thing, and he's just standing there like, "Can you please get off my ship? We're trying to do something right now."
We're trying to do a thing. Just fuck off. But I mean, all I will say is that everything that I've seen is fantastic.
Good.
That's it.
I think
That's all I can say.
that is making me happy. So
Indeed.
next we have the Tyranids. What I will start by saying are our hungry space horrors.
Mm. I mean, the Tyranids are really cool, and obviously, my friend Katie's like absolute like favorite faction ever. But the Tyranids have always been a faction for me that I don't really get the appeal. And like a big part of that is I hate spiders, so I hate creepy crawlies, of which they are famous for. But also, a big part of an army for me personally is the individual narrative of the models. So, for example, people in the chat may or may not know this. All of my custodians have names. Each one of them has a backstory that they've built up on the table. My Imperial Fists, all the sergeants upwards in rank, are all going to have backstories and names. You can't do that for Tyranids. You just can't. You can't have like a Gaunt who's like got a name because it's literally the antithesis of how their lore or their narrative works. And so it's difficult for me to find like a narrative hook sink my teeth into. And also, one of the big things about Tyranids is that they are this existential Lovecraftian horror. Like, they are this cosmic horror that is scary on a level because they are so vast and so unknowable that your brain simply cannot wrap its mind around what they are and the level at which they operate in the universe. And I personally find it difficult to sort of like hook onto narratively. But yeah, they're alien, basically.
Yeah, xenomorphs.
Yeah, they're the xenomorphs.
They're xenomorphs. And again, from the lore side of things, every hive fleet that is described in the lore, like Kraken, Titan, Juggernaut, Leviathan, so on and so on, all of them are literally just tiny little initial tendrils of the greater Tyranid hive fleet. So everything that has been experienced, like the devastation of Baal, the assault on Ultramar, like huge, like, and these are both these planets are first founding Space Marine Legion / chapter home planets, like some of the most heavily fortified places in the entire galaxy, and they were almost completely taken out by Tyranids. The only things that saved them was on Baal, demons showed up for no apparent reason, and then on Ultramar, the Indomitus Crusade showed up. That was it. That was the like pure happenstance in both situations saved Space Marine planets from getting utterly demolished. So Tyranids really are like, if you want to play the army that like you just perfectly described, like the embodiment of the existential threat of an entire galaxy, that is just like you are the hive mind behind a unending horde of nameless horrors that are about to just eat everything. That's the army for you. And now we also have their secret agents, the Genestealer Cults.
Yes. Okay. So Genestealer Cults I find a lot more interesting as a faction, because number one, their model range is just stunning. Like, it's all amazing.
Caveat: it is expensive to play Genestealers.
Yeah. Well, actually, we say this. At the moment, it's not, because they're crap.
True. Getting your hands on a large pile of Genestealers, if you get lucky on eBay, could bring the cost down a lot, but GW hasn't, due to lack of sales or whatever, dropped the price of a Start Collecting box or whatever, which, by the way, their Start Collecting box is an absolute joke because it's not actually a playable, like a legal list. There's no HQ, there's no troops, or there's too few troops or something like that. Anyway, but Genestealer Cults are, the Tyranids have these special units called Broodlords, which are capable of operating independently from the Hive Fleet. So they drop these things down on planets, and they slowly infiltrate, like the underground of a planet. They'll kidnap some people, they'll brainwash them, and slowly, literally build a cult around the star gods, which are the Tyranids. And they convince people that the star gods are coming to save them from the Emperor, and they have to make way for the star gods. So, decades, hundreds of years of planning and surreptitious activity leads to a giant uprising right before a Tyranid fleet shows up, and the planetary defenses go into absolute chaos, and makes it easier for the Tyranids to come down and eat them.
So there are some really interesting examples of Genestealer cults in the narrative and in the books. Also, I've just seen Quietus 86 is just gone, Nids are the good guys. I take personal umbrage with this statement. They are absolutely not the good guys. Custodes are the good guys.
As someone who studied international law, I'm sure you can agree with the somewhat philosophical moral argument that knowledge of whether or not an action is good or evil does not take away whether or not the action itself is good or evil. The Tyranids may not have an understanding of their actions being either good or evil. They're only driven by the desire to eat, but that doesn't change the fact that eating a planet is an immoral action. So
yes, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. But
Philosophy
yeah,
with
going
Dr.
going
Rhino.
back to oh yeah, going back to the Genestealer cults. The Genestealer cults are fascinating, and that's mainly because they are either really, really well written or very poorly written. There's not a lot of in between with them, and that's basically how the reason for that is basically because of how they operate. So, for example, they are very, very well written in the Bersaris Call novel. I don't know if you've read that yet.
Not yet. No.
Okay, so they do appear in that.
They also
And I
appear in the Infinite and the Divine.
Yes, yes, they do. And I think that's another good example of them being used because that sort of contributes to the idea of these two idiots not really knowing what they're doing and just being like, oh, yeah, I'll just use this thing, it'll be fine. And it's just like, not fine at all.
And the fact that they're arguing about it as they're leaving the planet, like, okay, now we know how this happens, you idiot. We're trying to keep it as spoiler free as possible, but yeah, Genestealers show up at some point.
Yes. But yeah, so like a really good use of Genestealer cults is in the Belisarius Call novel, and it basically this isn't a spoiler because this kind of happens way before that book happens. But the size of the Emperor chapter are basically obliterated on Sotha by a tendril of a hive fleet, and there's kind of this big thing that the size of the Emperor are like not supposed to have given a very good account of themselves, and they're kind of a little bit dishonored by this because they just get fucking obliterated by this hive fleet. Their defenses just fold, and even like the survivors of the chapter are a bit like, yeah, how did this happen? Like, we're better than this. Like, I don't really understand. Like, what happened there? I thought our defenses were way stronger than that, and it's because they were undermined by Genestealer cults on the planet who were operating without their knowledge. And that, I think, is a really interesting take, a really interesting thing that, like, the Genestealer cults have been so active for such a long period of time on this planet that they were able to infiltrate the chapter serfs and just undermine all of this chapter's defenses. That's cool.
Yeah, and it really helps push that the idea that no one is safe from the Genestealers, because even the most loyal servants of, you know, the most badass, you know, soldiers in the entire Imperium. So the serfs are, you know, the human servants and assistants to the Space Marines. So if even they are able to be so subtly changed and corrupted to serve the Genestealer cults that even the Space Marines don't notice, these guys with like, they're super vigilant, they're for the most part very, very intelligent, and you would think they would notice these changes. They would, like, with their incredible olfactory senses, be able to smell, like, why do you smell like a sewer? Like you'd think they would notice these things, but these Genestealer cults are so insidious that they manage to sneak one by even Space Marines, which is, I mean, pretty awesome.
Even deeper than that, how did the librarians of the chapter not feel the psychic presence of the Genestealer Patriarch controlling its cult?
That's a good point too.
Yeah, and that would be probably because the Genestealer cult was able to infiltrate into, you know, the minds of the psychers and just shield themselves, because they can just kind of do that.
They put a scotoma into the brain of the librarian.
Yeah, precisely. But yeah, I mean, those are really good examples of how Genestealer cults have been used. But they can also be used as a bit of a Deus Ex Machina. Like, literally, like, oh, looks like it was Genestealer cults the whole time. And you're just like, oh, how did this happen? Like, why is this the case? A really good example of that is the Caiaphas Cain books. The Caiaphas Cain books, they oscillate between, this is all right, and, oh, this is pretty good. I don't think they ever really ascend past the, this is pretty, it never really ascends past the 7 out of 10.
Isn't he like the commissar who always manages to end up in a position where, like, everything goes to shit, but he always survives? Yeah. That's him? Okay.
Yeah,
He's
and
the one they
it's
make all
a
the memes
tongue-in-cheek.
out of, just like concern.
Yeah, yeah, literally. And the thing is, like, he's a cool character, and I like him, and his backstory is cool. But the issue I have with those books is that nothing ever changes. No one dies, like except for like nameless grunts who you just never hear about again. And a lot of the books do sort of fall into this trap of, oh, it was Genestealer Cults the whole time. Who would have thought? And you're just like, oh, you saw that coming, didn't you? It's just, yeah, it gets a little bit samey. But there are some absolutely phenomenal books in that range. But yeah, those are my problems with Genestealer Cults as a whole. They're either very well or very, very mediocrely written.
There was a recent episode on Winter's SEO's YouTube channel where his 13th Legion
Mhm.
went against some, I can't remember his name, went against Genestealer Cults, and the conversions the guy did for them, because Genestealer Cults are, they're a mix between human and alien. It also, from the artistic side, from the painting, from the converting building perspective, it gives you a lot of opportunities. Like, he replaced the Patriarch's head with a Ideneth Deepkin like octopus, so it had this big like tentacly face, and I was just like, oh
God,
I need that.
Horrible.
So next we
that is
have
cool.
Orcs. Big dumb, big gun.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you say the word orc to someone, it has its own like imagery that is immediately conjured by people, and it's kind of that, basically, the unstoppable horde of East London Cockney accents. Basically. Get a shooter, bruv.
Oh God, we're doomed. Why?
Wagon.
The East Londoners, they're coming.
It's literally that. Like, honestly.
So, but yeah, in very simple terms, orcs are mushrooms with legs, and they because again their lore is they bleed green, and their blood is spores that bury in the ground, and over a certain amount of time literally grow an egg sac under the ground with an orc in it, and an orc shoots out of the ground. So when you kill one, it's seeding the ground with more orcs.
Do you want me to tell you something?
What?
You just said an incorrect statement.
I've lied. I've lied to chat.
You've lied. Lied to all the listeners.
I'm sorry, listeners.
So,
Fix
Orc
me.
blood is actually red, and there's a very specific reason why Orc blood is red, and a very, very specific reason why a lot of people think that it's green. So, the reason people think that it's green is because on the Space Wolf Codex in 3rd edition, it has a Space Wolf fighting an Orc, and the wounds that the Orc is taking, the blood coming out of the Orc is all green. Now, the reason for that is because it's a lot earlier, and a lot of the stuff hadn't quite been codified yet. And it would have stayed green had it not been for the heavy metal team and the army painting team. And the reason for that is because doing green blood on green skin doesn't show up. Basically, it does not show up well. And the contrasting color to green is red. So they made the blood for orcs red just so it would contrast.
Oh. I learned something today, chat. The more you know. So
yeah.
My mistake,
honestly,
but was that the only thing I said that was incorrect? Is the whole they're still mushroom people, and they grow from little pods in the ground? Okay, good. That's why it's so hard to get rid of an orc infestation. Like, once they land, the planet's pretty much lost.
Yeah, it's not a great situation. But I do. I don't know if you've been watching Liam's live streams. I agree with him on this. The direction that they're taking orcs at the moment is really good, I think, because they're moving away from like comedy East London orcs to no, these guys are fucking scary. Like, they will kill you and then eat your corpse, and they'll kill you in a horrible way and enjoy it. Like, they are scary, and I love that they're moving towards that.
No, less because if you guys go look at old orc sculpts. Like there's the joke that orcs all have terrible scoliosis, or they just do squats a lot because they just like they have this pose where their butts are sticking out almost at a 90-degree angle from their lower backs. And their faces, their poses were all, like you said, very comical. And there are some who actually hold a differing opinion that the comedy aspect of orcs, Goobertown Hobbies was actually talking about this, where he preferred, at least for maybe even for 40K as well, but for Age of Sigmar, he was specifically looking at the orc or the Cruel Boys for that came in the Dominion box, and he's like, these guys are so like grim and angry, and he's like, he had always preferred like the older school orcs that were more goofy, but in that vein, you still have access to all of those models. So if you like more the goofy, like, oh, I'm gonna strap a rocket to my back and I'm gonna light it with my lighter, and I wear a snorkel in outer space so it helps me breathe in space, like that kind of orc, you can those models exist, you can make those orcs. Or if you want to go like, and I'm right there with you, I prefer the grimdark aesthetic to be grimdark. Give me the big scary orcs, give me the beast snagas. Those guys look intimidating, even though I'll never paint orcs. That's not my jam.
Yeah, I know. Oh, actually, you know what? Since I'm here, we can do a thing.
Thing.
So you are not the only one who hates painting orcs. My friend Liam Dempsey from DZTV, for those of you that are watching, also hates painting orcs. He just hates it. And so there's a big thing at the moment. He has Gazgul as a model in his pile of shame, and he just put up on Instagram saying, just for fun, if I get 3,000 followers, I'll paint this model. Of course, we made sure he got 3,000.
Oh yeah, I think I helped spread the message on that. That made me feel warm and fuzzy, because I was forced to paint Marneus Calgar because I opened my stupid mouth, and so I had to paint Marneus Calgar. So if I have to paint an Ultramarine, if someone's forcing themselves to, or putting up the opportunity for them to be forced to paint something they don't want to paint, I'm all in on it. Shared pain, son.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. And so there's a guy on Instagram called Bolt Rifles who's taken that to the next level, and he's just gone, you know what? If we can get Liam to 5,000 followers, then he has to paint a whole orc army. And that is the next goal.
Oh, that's cruel, and I love it. I'm in. I'm absolutely in. I will be doing my best to make that happen. We'll share out Liam's Instagram. We're gonna get him those follows because as long as we document the process, like you have to like go in and like take like candid shots of his face while he's painting and just get that like look of abject sadness. Just.
Yeah. Like, oh god, why?
End me.
So yeah, this is happening, and I'm seeing him next, probably I think on the 14th or 15th, because I think that's when we're doing the next live stream. So yeah, on the live stream, I'm gonna be like, guys, go follow Liam because I want him to cry over orc models while he's painting them.
Tears do make a great thinner for green paint.
Oh, absolutely.
And finally, we come to all the Eldar. Because you got Eldar in all kinds of flavors. You got your traditional with your craft world. Then you have your kinky space elves with the Drukhari. You have your tricksy space elves with the Harlequins. And then you have a little bit of everybody, but they're just like all really into death with the Ynnari.
Emo space elves.
Emo space elves, which I guess you could also say with Drukhari, but they're more like scene elves. They're like bright, flashy colors and a little bit more energetic.
Yeah, I mean, again, when it comes to the Eldari, they do fit a lot of the like Tolkien-esque archetypes of what elves are supposed to be, in a lot of ways. So I think if you do just say kind of like space elves, people just kind of get what that means.
Pointy ears, like, tall, thin, really fast.
Haughty,
very, very beautiful.
Yeah, precisely. So yeah, I think that's a very easy one to explain. When it comes to how they play on the tabletop, that is less easy to explain for craft worlds, because currently they have a lot of very specialized units none of which are very good.
And as folks are actually during our very first chat, again, bearing in mind that I knew nothing. I'm still very new to the hobby. I'm like, well, yeah, everyone talks about craft worlds needing new models because their aspect warriors are like 15 years old and all this other stuff. And I assumed not having new models also means they're not good on the tabletop. Any army can be good if piloted well. That is the ultimate thing to take away from this. If you for some reason are like, oh, those craft world Eldar sound good. Oh, but Doc and Quipster said, I know you, and you put me in my place on this. You were actually, no, craft worlds can do very well. And and so that's this big caveat. If you find out you're like, oh, I'm really into Genestealer cults, and someone says they're a really hard army to pilot and they're not very good right now, don't let that put you off. If you like the way a model looks, if you like the lore, like if you're into lore, if you want to read up on these things, if you find out about a specific Chaos Marine faction or a knightly house for knights, Imperial or Chaos, if you think those are cool, don't let anything gameplay wise keep you from picking, painting, and playing that army. Because ultimately, you getting good at that specific faction, you will be surprised how often you win.
Yes, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think on top of that as well, we have to look at the context of the game right now. A lot of people out there are just saying like, "Oh, yeah, my faction isn't very good. Oh, we need new rules, blah blah blah." And by and large, these are people who don't have codexes yet. Best examples of that are, Genestealer Cults and Tyranids, for example.
Tau.
There are Tau, yeah. I mean, number one, you are completely right. You can play those factions well. You can win with those, like full stop. Like that is a thing. But also on top of that, if we look at the context of the new codexes that have come out, they're all really good. They're all very thematic. There's obviously some broken stuff in the Drukhari and the AdMech codexes, but those will be taken care of. Like those will be FAQ'd.
There was just an FAQ for AdMech.
Exactly.
And I thought it was a fairly good step in the right direction from and bear in mind, when people talk about FAQs and things needing to be fixed, a lot of this comes from a competitive standpoint. The quote unquote competitive matched play way to play 40K, which we'll get to the play part at the end of this, but with matched play, that's just one of three main ways to play 40K. You also have open war, which is very much more randomized. It's thematic. It allows you to do kind of whatever you want and just have a more casual game. And then there's Crusade, which is a format where it's games played over time with a consistent narrative. So you're telling the story of a smaller and growing group of your army, and you give them special little upgrades, and sometimes they take negatives because they died or they fell in battle and all this other stuff. So a lot of the things that people complain about are for the tournament scene. They wouldn't necessarily specifically apply to your home games, because people complain about Iron Strider Ballistari because they're super fast, they could shoot, they got the core keyword, which just got taken away. All these things that you're like, well, I don't know why that applies to me, because one, you may not even run those, or more likely, you're not running 6 or 9 of them, which is what you would see in a tournament list.
I mean, 100%. I mean, building on that as well, one of the big defining tournament lists at the moment is Manny Chima's AdMech list. That's got 120 Skitarii Rangers in it. Who's going to take that to a casual game? Who thinks to themselves like, yeah, of course, I'm going to take 120 of the same model because that's a thematic, well-balanced army for casual play. Like, no one is doing that outside of the competitive scene. Also, I don't want to say that as a disparaging comment towards Manny. I know he's a great guy, and he's playing within the rules for a very specific context, which is tournament play.
Yep.
But yeah, I do think a lot of people out there who are like, oh, these things are too strong, my faction needs more help. Most of these people aren't actually tournament players, I would say. And it's a bit like, okay, if you've got someone in your hobby group that is maybe not fun to play with, I think maybe you guys need to have a conversation about that rather than simply blame the factions themselves.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you're not playing in the LSO. You're playing at your local hobby store. It's
Yeah.
your LGS, not the LSO. You know, I think I'm gonna start. I think I'm gonna start saying that. And the LSO for folks who don't know, because I only learned this recently. LSO stands for Lone Star Open. It's a bigger tournament that takes place in Texas. That was actually just recently won by a Sisters Army. So
This is a good,
yes,
great
and
army.
the crazy part, I was like weirdly proud of this. I've never played Sisters. I'm obviously making a Sisters Army, but my army list that I had planned, my 2,000 point army list, was 3 units off of what the list that won that tournament was.
Nice.
So that felt kind of cool to be like, I just picked units. I'm like, okay, well, I'll use some of these and some of that, and then a little of this, and I guess that's okay, but I don't know. And then this guy goes and wins. It was John Lennon, not the John Lennon, but John Lennon. John Lennon won this tournament with this list. I'm like, oh crap! If I get Celestine and like 5 more Retributors, I've got this list. So
100%.
that felt pretty cool.
I love when that happens. That's cool.
So when it comes to that perspective, again, like we've been discussing, don't get bogged down in worrying about how your army or what people are complaining about how your army plays or the army that you might be interested in, because 9 times out of 10, that's from a tournament playing perspective. That probably won't apply to you in your day-to-day matches that you're playing at home or at your local game store. So now that we've talked about the factions, so we've said like pick a faction that you think is the coolest for you. Like what faction do you think looks coolest? Lore, all these things that factor into it. Do not go chasing the meta. Don't go chasing meta falls. Because
could not agree more.
You will not catch it. You will never catch it unless you have a bajillion dollars and you're commission painting. Like if I had $5,000 to spare and I wanted that guy, Manny, you said with the 120,
Manny Chima.
Yeah, if I was like, okay, Quipster, I'm going to pay you $5,000 to paint 120 Skitarii for me, you would probably still say no. But painting or paying someone to paint so you can go play in a tournament with like the army that won the previous week's tournament, an FAQ could have come out since then, and that army that you just paid a ton of money for to either paint yourself or pay someone else, it's not going to win. And you're not going to have as much fun, I think.
Yeah.
I know I would not have as much fun playing an army that you're not connected to.
I agree. And to be honest, even when it comes to taking the competitive meta very seriously, everyone I know who is serious about the competitive scene has 2, at most 3 armies, and that's it. And they will absolutely focus down on becoming the best they possibly can with those armies. My best example of that is my friend Ed. Now, Ed is the Sandman on the Conclave podcast.
Oh, okay, cool.
I do. So his main 3 factions are Tau, Dark Angels, and Genestealer Cults. And his thing at the moment is he says to me last night, I want to be the best Genestealer Cult player I could possibly be. And I think that is a fantastic goal for the competitive scene. Like being best in faction is a great goal.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I've got to quickly shout out Richard Reed in the comments, who's just giving me some of the best compliments ever.
Richard's a huge fan of yours. Like,
oh my! I mean, I can see that. I'm a fan of his after this.
And check out, dude, Richard, can you drop your Instagram in the chat? Quipster, you should probably follow.
Please
Richard
do.
is doing some incredible, like, grimdark, like, I think he's doing Blood Ravens and, you know, the totally not Thousand Suns. But yeah, Richard is an incredibly talented painter. He actually sent me when I was building my, this guy, because I'm sure I sent you the picture once I had finished the cloak.
Oh yeah.
On him. Okay, so I was cleaning all the bits and I realized that the whole model was perfect, except for one of the hands was missing a thumb. And he goes, "Oh, I have that part." I'm like, are you kidding me? You have the hand this specific hand for this specific model. He's like, yeah. And in addition to that, he just, without telling me, sent me a bunch of other stuff. He's an incredibly generous individual. Also, I can't believe I didn't mention this to you before, but it might be hard to see, but you see this little piece of blue rubber in there,
Oh
little
yeah.
silicone? That
Huh?
came from the inside of the leg of the plastic of my mold. So, or of my my Achilles. So this is part of the master mold for the Achilles Dreadnought. So anybody who's getting one until they fix the mold is going to be missing a small chunk in the left greave on the inside.
Oh no.
So
Oh.
so this is good. This is like I think this is my good luck charm. I have a piece of the master mold, a piece of the, you know what? This is my STC. I have a piece of the STC for the
Oh my word.
for the Achilles Dreadnought.
I can't wait till they make all this stuff plastic, man, honestly.
That needs to
Like,
happen.
that's I genuinely think that's the way this is going. Like, so I can talk about this because I'm a 40k playtester. I don't know a damn thing about like Horus Heresy or any of that. But from what I've seen from like leaks and stuff, they're doing this Horus Heresy box, and that's all the like baseline Space Marine kits are all going to be in plastic. I would not be surprised if a lot more stuff starts coming out in plastic.
I'd be willing to keep the Forge World name, like even make me pay that additional Forge World premium, but to get the Achilles Dreadnought in plastic, to get the Telemon in plastic, where I don't worry about resin, I don't worry about bubbles. Like the reason why they, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, the reason why they did resin in the first place is because at the time, the amount of detail they wanted for these sculpts could not be achieved with plastic. But now plastic
100%.
is doing just as well, if not better, than their resin formula.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to the plastic production process, the way that it works is that resin molds are cheap, and resin as a material is also cheap. But it comes with a lot more issues like bubbles, like hollow spaces, like, you know, chunks missing out of the model, like whatever. Whereas with plastic, the mold for the plastic kits is more expensive by far. I mean, it's somewhere between 8 and 20 grand per mold. But once you've got it, that's it.
Yeah,
You've got it.
It's infinite.
And then the plastic, and the plastic you pay is pennies, basically. And so it just for that reason alone, it would not surprise me if they're trying to replace as much as possible in plastic.
Well, here's hoping that like with the arrival of the 9th edition Custodes Codex, for example, we'll see like all the stuff that's on Forge World get released in plastic. So we'll see.
I couldn't possibly comment on anything to do with that.
Okay, fair enough. And as far as like everything we've talked about when it comes to from a tabletop perspective, from a lore perspective, there are tons of incredible resources out there. The first ones I go to personally for the Math Hammer perspective, because he gets videos out so fast. Auspex Tactics is a great initial overview of new rules changes or if models are being released, what to expect. And he even does like really cool breakdowns of like intercessors. Like here are the 3 options for the intercessor weapons. Here's the amount of damage they would do. Here's the amount of units that they would kill. You know, a standard unit of 5 against guardsmen, intercessors, a tank, things like that, and the amount of wounds that they would deal. I find that really helpful from a gameplay perspective, because while I'm not uber competitive, I don't want to I want to make my choices based on good data, and I'm not good at math. So someone lining that out and being like, this gun is particularly good against intercessors. Like, okay, I want something that's really good against intercessors, so I'll build them to this. So
I think.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think you've touched on something really interesting there, and that is essentially the sharing of knowledge. And that because if you don't have experience with a certain faction, you don't want to make mistakes in the next thing you're going to buy, like you were saying. And so one thing I think is almost essential at this point is having a Warhammer Instagram account, because the community for Warhammer on Instagram is phenomenal. Super positive, everyone's really nice, and there's a lot of people. And so, like, I have made good friends on Instagram, on my Warhammer Instagram, just because. And this is the secret, actually, to becoming friends with people on Instagram. Put stories up. Put stories up, and people will respond to them, and then you'll start a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works.
That's how I started talking to you. That's how
Yep.
that's how I started talking with Versatile Terrain about their
Yep.
nameplates. That's how I started talking to, oh God, how many other people have I talked to?
So many.
Modern Synthesist, Dusty Paint Pots, like all these incredible conversion artists, like just being like, they show something on their story. I'm like, I'm just getting started. What tool did you use for that? 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer the question. So you're absolutely correct. Asking people about a faction, again, using resources like Instagram, YouTube. As far as the lore perspective, Luton does incredible videos. So does 40K Theories. That's where I got started, was the 40K Theories YouTube channel, and he has a huge video playlist called 40K Lore for Newcomers. That is literally what is the Horus Heresy, and that's like 30 videos, but it's what are the Custodes? What is the Imperial Guard? So on and so on and so on. So if you're looking for a specific faction, he's probably already done a video on it.
Yes.
And
utilizing
I was going to say, also, don't get too hung up on pre-building your army, because like we were just talking about, you have especially as a new person, you're like, well, I need to know like what units to get, and that's where these videos might help you. How do I phrase this? It might help you pick the units, but you don't necessarily need to worry about like, okay, I need to build a 2,000 point army. Just pick the units you think look really cool. Worry about building the army later, because ultimately this hobby is supposed to be fun. The painting is a large portion of the hobby, so pick stuff that you want to paint.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. And more than that as well, if you're going to go down the painting path of the hobby, it doesn't really matter what you paint. Like, just take your time, enjoy the process of it more than anything else. But if you're going to go down the more like well-rounded casual path, like I'm going to do some painting, I'm going to do a bit of gaming, one of the most important things is finding a community. Now, I'm a little bit spoiled because I live in London. And so in London, we have the London Wargaming Guild, which is the biggest Warhammer club on the planet. I'm going to turn this light off because it's really cheating. So we have the London Wargaming Guild, which is it's got almost 2,000 members at this point. And you just turn up and they match you against someone else. And that's how I got back into the game. I said, I've got 2,000 points. No, I said, I've got 1,500 points of Custodes. I'm new to the game. I would like to learn to play. And they matched me against someone else, and I started playing my first games like that. I know there are a lot of people, especially who live in more rural parts of the world, or in the countryside, where it's harder to get games. In that case, I would say absolutely tap into the online community, specifically through Instagram and through things like Discord, especially. So the DZTV Discord, for example, dropping a plug in there.
Yeah, no, go plug away.
Yeah, so the DZTV Discord is a pretty amazing place, to be honest. I have met a bunch of really good friends through it, and they have a really interesting thing where they have a map, like a Google map of the world, where people drop in their location, so that anyone else from the DZTV Discord can go, oh, hang on a sec, that guy lives close. I'm gonna drop him a message. Hey, dude, you want to have a game? Like, that has happened to me a whole bunch of times, and I've played some really cool people from DZTV, and it's about tapping into that online community, because when you first get into the game, you don't know anyone. Like, it's a 2-player game. You have to know some people to play. And so, yeah, it's about, getting out there and just getting to know people.
And funny enough, I'm actually in the process of potentially getting my father into Warhammer, because my cousin was asking me about, like, so my grandfather has been visiting at my parents' house, and my parents live, like 20 minutes away from me. And so I was popping by to visit. My cousin happened to be there. So I'm updating both of them. My grandfather was an art professor for 40 years. So I was talking to him about my painting and the projects behind it and everything I'm doing. And my cousin's like, wait, why are you painting all these things? So I started going down the motor mouthed rabbit hole of like, okay, so it's this game called Warhammer, and then you take all these models and you're fighting these big wars. And my dad's in the room and he goes like, yawn, like joking with me, but he tells me the next day, he's like, you know, I was thinking about what you said, and everything you were describing sounds so much like Risk, the board game Risk. I'm like, it is a lot like Risk, Dad. It is a lot like Risk. And he's like, I loved Risk when I was a kid. I would like to know more about this game. And I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna get my dad into this game. Oh, this is gonna be incredible. So that was just a personal thing for me. So when it comes to you, okay, so let's say Quipster, you have picked your army. You're like, I want to do Custodes. I want to do a Custodes army. How do we go about? I mean, Custodes might be a bad example given the things I have here, but ways to effectively go about acquiring your army, or at least to start acquiring your army. So I have listed out here, start collecting versus combat patrol boxes if your army has one. The combat patrol boxes are the newer iteration of the start collecting boxes, where the big failing of the start collecting box, using Genestealer Cults as an example, the start collecting boxes weren't necessarily playable right out of the gate, because in the Genestealer Cults example, you can't play without like an HQ unit. But this box didn't come with one. Now the start collecting boxes are slightly more expensive, but you're guaranteed, depending on your kitting, you're like the loadout you give the models, to have exactly 500 points. So you can immediately go start playing with what is in that box. And it's
there's sorry, I was gonna rudely interject. I apologize.
No, interject away. Discourse is part of this discussion.
So what I was gonna say is that regardless of what faction you pick, I think there's kind of two paths into the game. There's the I have never played this before path, and the I am getting back into this path. So, and they're very separate journeys, I would say. So the I have never done this before path, I would say to you, okay, get the starter box, the big one. And the reason for that is because it has literally everything you need to just have a starter game. It's got a whole selection of units, it's got some terrain, and it has the rule book.
You mean like the Indomitus box?
Not the Indomitus box specifically, because that was just full of Marines, basically,
and Necrons. So if you're into the Necrons or Space Marines, the Indomitus box is definitely, and that was one of the things I was going to mention, is like the value for that box. That was the very first thing I ever purchased, because those happened to be the two armies that I had started with interest in, was Necrons and Space Marines. I asked my local game store owner, like, hey, I was thinking of playing these two armies. Do you have anything, like, what would you suggest I buy? He's like, hilariously, and then he pulls out this big box. He's like, this is the last one I have left. I'm like, yay.
So I would actually say the Indomitus box specifically is a really bad way of starting the hobby.
Oh.
And I say that specifically because I would consider myself to be a fairly experienced hobbyist at this point, and I haven't finished painting that box.
Oh, I painted it 1.5 times. I painted all the Necrons, I painted all the Space Marines as Blood Angels, came up with the idea for my custom chapter, stripped them all, and then repainted them. So I actually lost the very first model I ever painted, because I wasn't thinking of it. Like, people always say, keep the very first model you paint. I didn't know that. So all I have is a video of me turning it around. That's all I have, but that's neither here nor there. Carry on. Sorry.
So yeah, what I would say is the starter box, the big one that has the rule book and all the terrain in it. Do you know what I'm talking about? The previous one was the Dark Imperium box. I don't know what this one's called. Is it like the Chapter Master Edition or something?
I thought Indomitus because like Dark Alliance or Dark Vengeance was the one that was Dark Angels versus Nurgle, but
So that
maybe
was
maybe
the
we're on two
7th
different.
edition.
Oh, maybe we're on two different
That was the
wavelengths
7th
then.
edition opening box. You know what? I'm just going to go on the GW website right now and look it up
Yeah.
because that is the box to get. Start here. There we go. Okay, cool. Yes, here we go. The Warhammer 40,000 Command Edition box set. That's the one I would get. Or to be honest, any one of those. Now, the reason I would get that is because it has literally everything you need to start, whereas the Indomitus box, A, you can't get it anymore because it was a limited edition run, and B, if you get like a start collecting Blood Angels or start collecting Dark Angels or whatever, that's a lot of models, and I think that can be quite intimidating, especially because it's designed for someone who wants to start one of those armies, not someone who wants to get into the hobby as a whole.
Okay.
So it doesn't have a rule book. It doesn't have any terrain. Whereas those the Commander Edition box set you could just invite your buddy over and be like, hey man, I'm starting this new game. I thought you might be interested. I've got the rulebook here. Do you want to help me play through a quick game? And you'll be able to do that. Whereas, with Indomitus, you just wouldn't. Or start collecting, you just wouldn't. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do. I see what you mean. The
Exactly.
with like for example, also going on eBay, if you might get lucky if you happen to you read up, you're like, okay, I really like Tyranids for what like that's the one that you're into. If you go on eBay and search like Tyranids lot or Tyranids army, there will be people posting fully painted armies, and you're free to buy those. If you so choose, be like, I think that color scheme's good. I've got a couple $1,000s to drop. Go ahead. A lot of times, though, there will be people selling their stuff and Facebook Marketplace as well. People will just be offloading their stuff. They're like, I don't want to play this faction anymore. Or I'm getting out of the hobby. And you'll get partially painted, possibly even terribly painted models that you might have to do some work, but you can save a lot of time and money that way. That is one way to go about it. But like you pointed out, there is no core book, there is no codex that necessarily comes with those. But those resources are also available online. Like
True.
through like Wahapedia, Battlescribe.
So what I would say, sort of adding to that as well, is the models that having models unpainted, I think, can be quite intimidating because if you buy a box of intercessors and it's your first ever box of any Warhammer, you don't want to screw it up. Like, I think a lot of people get really hung up on the fact that they've seen a lot of cool stuff on Facebook groups, Reddit, and Instagram, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know if my painting is going to be up to scratch," and it can be quite a barrier to entry almost. And so this is the other reason I recommend the starter box for someone who's getting into the hobby for the first time, because they have zero painting experience, and those models in the box, those are your practice models. Those are the models you use to learn to paint before you pick a faction. Go crazy, I say. Do whatever you want. Paint them whatever colors you want. Just do it, and then use those techniques on the faction that you have picked specifically. That's when you buy a start collect. In fact, no, that's not when you buy a start collecting box. That's where you buy a troops choice from whatever faction you're going for, and it's the same kind of path. Then you're on the same path as, I would say, someone who's been in the hobby previously, like myself, for example. Like with me, I basically knew how to paint because I remembered from being a kid. I knew bits and pieces of the lore getting back in. And when I looked on the website, I was just like, yep, Custodes. That's it. That is what I want. Because I had a bit of background experience from when I was a kid. I was getting back into the hobby. I wasn't really technically new. And so the path for someone, I think, who is getting back into it is pick your faction, get a troops choice from that faction, pick your color scheme, and do it. And the reason I say specifically pick a troops choice and not a start collecting box, again, it's because having a shitload of unpainted models sitting around is intimidating. And I think at times demoralizing. I think it's
That's why we don't call
it's
it a
hard.
pile of shame. We call it a pile of potential. It is a pile of potential.
True.
That was from the
I
hobby
mean,
room. They were the ones who that was the coolest part is they created a website. I think it's even called pileofpotential.com where you create an account and you actually list out online everything that you have, like almost spreadsheet style, and you mark everything that you've done. Like, okay, is it built? Check mark. Did I prime it? Check mark. And so you can look at a glance of everything you have, because some people have like, boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. And sometimes like you only feel like cataloging that stuff once and then you completely forget. So being able to be like, crap, I want to work on something, but I just want to get something done. What do I have? Looks like the Genestealers only needed to, get highlighted and I'm done. Why do I keep going to Genestealers? They've infiltrated my mind, Quipster.
It's a funny thing, actually. So I've had this discussion with a couple of DZTV guys, and compared to them, I don't know if I'm not unique in the community, but I'm definitely I don't know if I'm even part of the norm in this discussion anyway, because having talked to people like Warsmith Chris or Say Hi Paul, these guys have, like, we'll call it the pile of potential to a degree which I have never seen. Say Hi Paul specifically, I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff on YouTube or Instagram.
I don't believe I have, but I will have to look. Say Hi Paul. I will have to look him up.
Say Hi Paul. He is one of the OG Warhammer players. He has 22 fully painted armies. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, tell me about it. It's nuts. And he once took us. We were on video chat, a couple of us with him, and he took us on a tour around his house. And he is more well stocked than my local GW. Like, he has that much Warhammer in his house. I think he told us if he totaled it all up, and decided to paint everything one day, it would take him full-time painting 7 years to paint everything to a tabletop standard.
Oh my god!
Like, that is a level that I cannot deal with. Like, I am a very organized person, and I like to don't look at the mess behind me. I like to consider myself a very minimalist person. So to have that kind of level of just stuff lying around would genuinely cause me anxiety. Having the painting pile that I have at the moment causes me anxiety, let alone that. And so yeah, I think for me, I would have to be as minimal as possible, just so I could know, okay, everything I have in my flat that is unpainted is a doable amount. And so it wouldn't be intimidating.
And in that perspective, you're absolutely right that you don't want to, like we mentioned before, don't get too much too quick. Pick one unit or these start collecting boxes, get the book, start to learn. And the recruit edition of the Indomitus box did this great thing. Hiding pain. Okay, so in the recruit edition of the book, it has you build. Nope, that ain't it. But while I'm searching for it, what it does is it has you build your first model. Has you build the captain, or excuse me, the lieutenant and the Necron Royal Warden. And then it has you use the little fold out mini board that's got 2 flip sides, and it says okay, put the 2 models on the board. This is how now we're going to show you the movement phase with these 2 models. And then it shows you the movement phase, and it's okay, congratulations, mission accomplished. You flip to the next page and it says, okay, now assemble and paint your scarabs. And then you do scarabs versus the lieutenant, and then you do the movement and the shooting phase. And then after that, you build the intercessors and the warriors, and then you do the movement, shooting, and the fight phase. And it builds you up that way using those little iterative steps. Because if you threw everything in the game rules-wise at somebody, might make their brains explode. It did for me, at least. But I am of the weak mind. And the other thing is that you're using models in a low enough count that you're not throwing in really complicated models. Like assault intercessors, very straightforward. Run them at a thing, they hit them with swords. They got some pistols, okay, but their big thing is they hit with swords. There's no complicated synergies that you necessarily need to worry about, at least initially. There can be if you want, but I feel like I'm rambling. But long story short, don't feel and the pile of potential, what someone is comfortable with sitting behind them. Like right now for the sisters, I have another half a squad of battle sisters to build, more Vinval, some sacrosancts, another box of Paragon war suits, and then a Skitari, or not a Skitari, a AdMech combat patrol box. That is my unbuilt in-box stuff. But I also have my Custodes army, which is 99% built, but not painted yet. So I'm okay with, like, that's how I've staged out my process, where the sisters is getting 100% of my attention now. But when I'm ready to paint something else, I can reach over and grab the Custodes and get immediately into that. So for me, having stuff in a position for me to just go doesn't give me too much anxiety. I think it also helps that I don't think about it too much because I'm just so focused on this particular project. But it is an individual thing.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yeah, don't get overexcited and go buy like 5,000 points of models, and then you're just sitting there staring at a pile of boxes and just going, "Oh no, what have I
Dude,
done?"
This is literally exactly what I did actually when I first got back into Custodes. Custodes before 8th edition were not an army; they just weren't a thing, and I'd always loved them. So as soon as I found out that they were an army, I was just like, "Yep, that is it. I'm in." So I dropped like £400. That's like $500-600 immediately. And I bought an entire Custodes army just on the spot. And didn't get around to painting most of them for a year.
Oof.
And like just having those boxes under my table, I was just like, it hurts me just to look at, because I'm just like, I just want them done. I wish I'd done this slower. So maybe that's just me.
So fight the urge for that giant serotonin boost of like being like, I have my whole army in this stack of boxes, yay! And then you get home and the serotonin wears off, and you're just like, oh no, I have to live with this choice. Like one model at a time. Spread that serotonin boost out over time. And like you said, start with troops. Get one unit of troops. That way you can like really focus down your paint scheme. Get used to playing like even one unit of troops versus your friend's one unit of troops. That's not a quote unquote standard game, but just that's how I trained my brother on how to play. I'm like, okay, I have this unit of 5 Necron Immortals. Here's your unit of 5 Intercessors. I threw down a couple random pieces of sprue on the floor and said, these are giant columns that go up infinitely into the sky. You can't see around them. We agreed to that, and that's how I showed him how to play. Which actually brings me to the point on terrain, especially if you're playing at home. Like most local game stores, luckily mine does, has tons of high quality, well painted terrain already there that you can utilize. But if you're playing at home, as long as you and your opponent agree on the keywords associated with your terrain, like my wet palette, this is a ruin. This water bottle is a cooling tower or something. You can make your terrain out of whatever you want. So that is an aspect of the hobby that is something that you can save money on. And I'm actually going to be doing a video soon on how to make your own terrain using your leftover sprue, which I know most people hold on to. You want to talk about something that'll give Quipster anxiety. Here's a giant bag of sprues.
Oh my god.
Empty sprue. And I turned this into terrain, into building ruins.
I would love to see that video.
So yeah, all you need is leftover sprue, cereal box cardboard, or like the boxes your models come in, like this stuff. All you need is that, some sprues, and some hot glue, and you can make terrain that is actually tough enough to like hold models. And once you prime it, like it looks like blasted city ruins. Is it poor hammer to the max? Absolutely. but it is effective, especially for me. I want terrain that functions, like, you know, the 5 inches up, like for vertical movement. I want that height to be accurate, so I can put units up. Like, I built a 2-tiered piece of, like, it's not quite an L, but let's just call it a large piece of terrain. I put all or as many models as I could fit on it, including a Redemptor Dreadnought, a metal-sided old Vindicator battle tank, all this stuff on that second tier, and it didn't even bow. So it's very stable. And these sprues are really strong, and it's otherwise wasted plastic. So why not find a way to recycle it? So that'll be another piece of content that I'll be making soon on how to make some super cheesy cheap terrain. But the next things that you're going to have to acquire, though, speaking of, you know, like like you got your sprues, you got your models, you may have even bought your paints. Like, there are tons of paint brands. Like I was saying, like Quipster. You know what? Actually, I'm going to talk with Ryan, the guy who painted my. Oh, it's the. I hope that doesn't come through. Hold on, let me. Okay, maybe if I'm talking, you might hear it, but if you hear this loud beeping noise, like that, ooh. In the background, that's my that's the tornado alarm test. First Tuesday of every month, they do they run the sirens to make sure that the sirens still work.
I'm glad that they work. Jesus.
Yeah, they're very loud. I'm from downstate Illinois, so a couple hours south of Chicago, and this is like where tornadoes are born. So
wow, okay. So that movie Twister was like made in down your ends.
I think, well, I mean, that's like Kansas, but yeah, it's essentially the same thing. It's all flat and cornfields. There's nothing here.
Excellent.
So this is going to do wonders for my audio for the for the podcast.
It's not too bad.
But but I'm going to talk to the guy who runs. Well, I mean, he painted my Silent King and he owns this paint company. But I want to send you a few of these paints. I want your opinion on them. Just like purely that, not any sort of like sponsorship deal or anything like that. I just want your opinions on the paints. But picking your paint brand, Citadel is something that everyone seems to start with. The paint pots irritate the living hell out of me because they are designed to make your paint dry out. That is what they are designed to do, so you buy more paint.
So actually, that may be the case, but I can tell you exactly why they look the way they do. It's because they're supposed to look like bolt shells.
Okay.
If you like, now that I've said it, you can kind of see
I can see the intent.
Yeah, like if you get a wash, like the taller ones, and you look at it, you're like, oh, okay, now I see it. That's what they're there for. That's what they look like that. And
speaking of washes, I will like credit where credit's due. I think there are two things that Citadel paints do really, really well. They're contrast paints. Specifically, Snakebite Leather, I think, is the best contrast paint they make, if not the best paint, period, that GW makes, in my opinion. But their washes, 9 times out of 10, are pretty solid.
They're amazing, I will say. I mean, I really like the Citadel paints. Just in general, I actually almost exclusively use GW paints, except for I have these two Vallejo, like, I don't know if you can see on screen.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. These two Vallejo paints. These are the alcohol-based paints, and they are bizarre to use because you can't expose them to air for very long, otherwise they dry immediately, and you have to thin them down with pure alcohol, which is just the weirdest experience ever.
And clean your brushes with alcohol too. You cannot clean off an alcohol brush in water. It will not clean, and it'll.
No.
Yeah. And I have I have a Green Stuff World Chrome paint that is an alcohol-based paint. They also smell terrible.
Yes, they do. It's very strange. But I mean, to be honest, like for a beginner, I would say, yeah, just stick with GW until you like are comfortable painting, and then start branching out, because we're getting a little bit deep here. There are 4 stages to mastering something. Firstly, there's unconscious incompetence, and this is essentially you know so little that you don't know what you don't know. The second one is conscious incompetence, which is you know enough that you understand how bad you are at something. The third one is conscious competence. Now, conscious competence is, imagine you've just learned to tie your shoelaces, but you have to really think about it.
Yep. Bunny goes
really
around the tree, pull the. Yep.
Exactly. And then unconscious competence is you've done your shoelaces up so many times you don't have to think about it, and you can be having a conversation with someone and looking at them while you're doing it. You don't. There's no thought required. It's just unconscious.
Okay.
So when it comes to painting, when you are in that first stage of unconscious incompetence, you don't know what you want. You just don't know because you don't know what's out there. So I think I would always say stick with Games Workshop until you've done some painting and you've at least reached that stage of conscious competence. Because by then you'll be thinking to yourself, okay, I need a green that has really good coverage, is this particular shade, and will work with this wash that I'm going to put over it. Because then you can start thinking, right, okay, these are the particular elements that I need.
And yeah, or you just start to find out through using, like, GW paints are slightly thicker, and so you have to water them down and to make sure that they're the right consistency when you're applying them. Otherwise, you'll get like really streaky paint lines, and you'll also potentially fill details. So, like you said, they're great for starting because they teach you how to thin your paints properly. They also are very opaque, so you'll get very strong coverage right off the bat, but where like you're like, man, I wish I had something that I could layer really well. And then I find out about these paints. Okay, cool. Now I have a line of paints that I can use for my wet blending and my layering. Okay, well, now I'm wanting, like, I like blending so much. I don't even want a full range of paints. I want like 6 paints that I can blend my own colors with, almost like a canvas painter. And then you go to like Chimera, and those are like the most, aren't they really expensive too? But like you end up with like 6 pots of paint that you just mix all your own colors with. I mean,
yeah,
you eventually identify what you need in your paints, and like Vallejo and Army Painter, I think, are very analogous to GW, in the sense that they are for the most part opaque, relatively inexpensive, wide color range. The Army Painter and Vallejo seem to be a little bit more helpful, where, I mean, Cuttlefish Colors is kind of guilty of this too, where you'll have paint colors like Gunpowder Gin, Cerulean, and Will-O-Wisp Blue, like where with GW you have like Druchii Violet, Nuln Oil, like words that don't necessarily directly connotate what the color is. Well, I mean, Druchii Violet has the word violet in it, but like it's not like sand tan or dark brown.
That's not necessarily true. The only issue with the GW paints is all of the colors are named after things in the lore and the narrative. So, like, for example, Auric Armor Gold is, to me, obviously a bright gold, because Auramite is the stuff that Custodes armor is made of. So of course it's gold. That's the issue there.
Okay, so yeah, you articulated, like, you said what I was trying to say much better than I did. So thank you. That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
But ultimately having finding your paint line, finding what works for you. Oh, we have a comment.
Hang on a sec. Zenthides, I believe, in the chat has just said XV88 is not a useful color name. Again, it is, because that's the original color of the Tau color scheme. So if you know what an XV88 is and you see a paint called that, of course you know what color that is. It's ochre.
But that's the but again, that's one of the things that is potentially a barrier for new people, which, although you could look at it less as a barrier, more as a potential gateway into the lore. You're like, XV88, what the heck is XV88? And then you'll feel so inclined to Google it, what XV88 40K, and then you'll get that little tidbit about the lore, and then you go deep diving into that.
Not even just that. So if you look in the context of how a newbie would buy paints, so okay, say for example, okay, I've got a box of some Tau. Okay, what paints do I need? Look on the back. Well, this says on the front that it's an XV8. Okay. It says on the back, oh, I need XV88, Tau Sept Orange, and this other thing. Oh, these all have Tau names. Ah, okay. I've seen those in the Codex. Okay, that makes sense. So it's just that you're getting
Okay.
that association immediately.
So you're actually like, these were part of my damn it, you were just talking about it. My unperceived ignorance, or the unconscious incompetence. Yes, in this regard, related to, I thought the names were just, yes, they were lore related, but they weren't specific to a
no.
like. Okay, so now I get it. I'm learning right along with you, chat. Learning right along with you. So
it's the same. I'm looking at my blues at the moment. I've got Macragge blue and Calgar blue. Macragge blue is the Ultramarines blue, and Calgar blue is named after Marnius Calgar, Chapter Master of the Ultramarines, and that's the highlight color.
Do they have a plot armor blue yet for Ultramarines?
I like the Ultramarines.
Oh no, and okay, so bear in mind, everyone, the reason why I jokingly ultimately play whatever you want, the Ultramarines are responsible for me getting into Warhammer in the first place, because I got into Warhammer when I was 12 or 13, and I picked up a big heavy book at Barnes & Noble because I'm like, I need a big book to read, and it was the Ultramarines Omnibus. So Uriel Ventress was my very first like 40k character that I learned anything about. So the Ultramarines, jokes aside, really do hold like a weird little special place in my heart. But I do acknowledge that I kind of have to be that guy who's like, they're the poster boys, therefore I don't like them. I have to be that like, I have to be that hipster, like, oh, I'm not going to paint yes, I am. I will not support these. You're telling me to paint this army because like that's your, like, every paint tutorial is, okay, first you get this blue and then this blue and then edge highlight and this light blue. And I'm like, I refuse. That's actually one of the reasons why I chose Blood Angels, because red was the opposite of blue.
To be fair though, having painted 3 Ultramarines now, and those are the only 3 Ultramarines I've ever painted, I get it. I now get why they are the starter army. They're so much easier to paint than anything else. Like, Macragge blue is an amazing paint, as is Calgar blue. They're just stunning to work with. So yeah, I mean, I get why they picked Ultramarines over Imperial Fists, for example.
Yeah,
or Blood Angels,
because weren't the Imperial Fists they were the original poster army?
Well,
like way
no,
back when?
Back in like 2nd edition, more than not, the Blood Angels were the poster boys. Yeah, absolutely. And the reason for that is it's always the painters. It's always the painters. So the reason for that is because back in the sort of early 90s, late 80s, all the paints were crap. Like, they were all a bit rubbish. The only paint that was any good and had any good coverage was blood red, the red color they had. And so that's why, if you look back at all the stuff they painted, all the box art at the time, there's a shitload of red in everything, because it was the only good color they had to work with.
Huh.
So yeah, that's how Blood Angels ended up as some of the poster boys. But eventually they moved on to the Ultramarines for kind of more, as far as I'm aware, like logistical reasons in the studio. Because essentially now what happens is, every time they have to paint a box art army to just maintain consistency, it's just always Ultramarines, and just like they just add to the studio army every time, just for ease of photography and everything.
Gotcha. So we've now started talking about paints, like buying paints, getting paints. So now that brings us to the last P of these 3 Ps in our long roundabout way. And I'm loving this. I think this is all pure gold. But my first tip, my number 1 tip for learning how to paint minis, just put paint on it. Like Scary from the Scarredcast likes to say, just put paint on it. It's only paint. Bear in mind, it is only paint. You're not irrevocably destroying something. If you somehow goop paint on there too thick and you're like, oh no, it dried, I can't see any of these details, use some alcohol if necessary. You probably don't even need that, but just water, soap, and a toothbrush. Take that off, and it's gone. Start over. That's you really have not lost anything but a small amount of time. So that's tip number 1. But tip number 2 is watch better videos than this. Goobertown Hobbies has a great video on priming. Duncan Rhodes has tons of great tutorial videos. Quipster here is going to be having videos on how to paint Black Templars as well as Imperial Fists. And I believe, are you, and like, you caught some flack for this, and I know we had the discussion concerning using the Instagram filters and adjusting contrast and stuff to compensate for the for what a camera can't do to equate to the human eye. But that might be something that I know I would be interested to see you discuss and show, because I don't know how to do that. If you've seen the photos that I post, they're terrible. I'm really bad at taking photos of my minis. That's one of the reasons why I'm super intimidated about having this army on Play on Tabletop, because they're using really good lighting and really good cameras and really big close-ups. So I'm like, these eyes must be perfect because people will see them.
So I actually do have a video in the works that is planned. That's not necessarily just this is how to take pictures of your minis, because I think that's been done a few times. It's how to grow your Instagram as a wargamer, and part of that is how to take good pictures. Because a lot of us do get Instagram like a little bit wrong. Like, it really frustrates me when people don't put their own face in their Instagram. I'm just like, I get it if you're embarrassed, but also like you're part of a community. Like, we accept you. And actually, sort of going back a little bit,
clip that. Someone clip that. That needs to be clipped and shared everywhere. And I'd like, no joke, like someone in chat, clip that right now. that right there. If we can take anything away from this entire discussion, Quipster just boiled all of this down into one sentence. So there we go.
I might have another interesting tidbit for you then. I think when we talk about getting good at the hobby, or like just putting paint on something, one of the most important things I think there is to remember is to be kind to yourself. Like, a lot of people, when they start a new hobby, their whole thing is, I don't like being bad at this. And it's part of the process of learning. No one starts good. And it's sort of almost a shift in mindset that you have to be kind to yourself and understand that you're at the beginning of a journey and not the end. You're going to get better. It's not static. You're not just going to always be a beginner, but you have to give yourself the time and the space to get good at something or get to a level that you're happy with. So yeah, just be kind to yourself. I think that's probably the best piece of hobby advice I can give.
I think that you hit the nail on the head, because of Instagram, Reddit, even Twitch. Like, I watch people paint and have seen works, like even Silva. Looking at her stuff, like, I can't help but feel like she's been painting for like less than 3 weeks and her stuff looks like this. Oh my God.
She's painted 3 models.
Oh God. And like, that can so easily be like this little worm that burrows into your brain and starts to like fester with thoughts of incompetence, comparative incompetence, when the only person you should be comparing your work against is your own, because you're the only person you can compare yourself to. Everyone's, and I know this is really corny, but everyone's life experience, everything that led up to the moment when they started painting and the time since they started painting is different for all of us. So I can't compare myself to Quipster here, because Quipster, started painting before I did, has a different mental approach to painting, a different, I have ADHD, and that keeps me from being able to focus on anything for like really long periods of time. When I first started painting, I thought I was going to be like shooting for Golden Demon painting competitions. Like, that's what I thought I was going to do. But I found out I can't give more than like 12 hours maximum on any model that I work on, because I start to like, my brain is just like, I can't work on this anymore. I need something else. So I either have to rotate things for a long enough period of time that timer, quote unquote, resets, or I have to just paint it to what I consider to be good enough to be seen on a table and then move on. And I'm okay with that.
Also, it could be worth looking into getting some modafinil. That might also help.
Modafinil? Because I am on I'm on Strattera for the ADHD, and I also take as weird as it is, we were talking about this before you came on. I found that a glass of moderately caffeinated green tea is enough of a stimulant to help even me out, because Strattera is a non-stimulant ADHD medication. Because when I was using Adderall and when I was younger, that stuff was way too much of a stimulant, and I couldn't handle it. It wasn't good for me. So
yeah,
getting a mild stimulant is helping, but it gives me the shakes, which is why I'm really glad I have this painting handle.
Excellent. So my brother has ADHD as well, and he swears by modafinil. It seems to be it's a stimulant, but quite a mild one as far as I'm aware. And what it essentially does is, I sound like a drug advert right now, Jesus.
Well, here in America, most drug adverts are with a British voice, so yeah, go for it. Side effects may include anal seepage.
God.
Ask your doctor if modafinil is right for you.
As someone with a chronic bowel condition, that's one I feel. Oh, have I ever talked about that before?
You mentioned it in our previous conversation, although that, please don't let that bar you from discussing it. I feel that the story that you have associated with Warhammer being, or coming back into Warhammer due to like the inability to like go places because of your gastrointestinal issues, I feel is something that is very okay. I was trying to find a beautiful way to say it, but it's good. It is a good thing to tell people. like okay, be eloquent, be eloquent. Good. Damn it.
I'll chat about my bowels in a second. But yeah. So yeah, my brother has ADHD, and he started taking modafinil. And essentially, what it does is, you know, your eyes get tired, or your brain gets a bit tired when you like read a book. So imagine if it didn't get tired, you just kept going. That's what it does, basically. And I assume, especially for something like miniature painting, that could be quite useful.
Yeah. I'll talk to my doctor. I actually have my appointment with my GP in a few weeks.
Excellent. See, I'm helping.
Yes. Yay. I think we have to now change it. I am now Quipster, and he is now the doctor.
But yes, talking about medical things, let's talk about my bowels for a second.
Yes.
So I'll just quickly catch these guys up on essentially how I got into the hobby in the first place. So yeah, you have to stop me if you have any questions about this. But
that includes you too, chat.
Yes, definitely, chat. So yeah, I have a condition called ulcerative colitis, and it's basically where your large intestine isn't recognized as part of your body, so your immune system attacks it. I had a really bad attack of it when I was about 13 or 14, and I ended up having to have my large intestine removed, which is why I've got a very slim waist. You know, that and narrow Asian hips. I get it from my mum's side. But yeah, so basically I had that.
Maybe he's born with it. Maybe he had his large intestine removed. Maybe it's Maybelline.
You know, it's funny actually. So I told a bunch of my friends this story quite recently, but a couple of years ago I had like an echocardiogram, which is like a heart ultrasound, and I'm fine, by the way.
Okay, good.
But yeah, so the person doing it was like, "Oh, let's have some fun with this," and she was like, "Right, okay, so this is your heart. If we move down a bit, your liver will be. Wait, hang on a sec. Where's your liver?" And just there was this look of panic on her face because like there was nothing on the screen where my liver should be, and she was like, what?" And then she looked a little bit further down, and there it was. And so basically, what had happened was, obviously, I don't have a large intestine, so there's like a little bit more space for everything to move around a bit, and it just kind of like moved to the side and down a little bit. And she was just the look on her face of sheer panic was hilarious.
Oh yeah, like, do I have a guy sitting in front of me who has no liver? Like, oh my god. Yeah. Do I get to write a? Yeah, am I about to get a Nobel Prize for medicine for finding the guy with no liver? Oh no, wait, there it is. Dang it. God. Okay, so you had an unfortunate attack from your UC when you were 13.
Yes. So I had to have my large intestine removed, and for a while I had something called a colostomy bag. I don't know if you've come across this before.
Yep. I know what a
Yes.
colostomy bag is.
So indeed. So for anyone in the chat who doesn't know what it is, essentially it's like a little plastic bag that attaches to the front of your stomach, and the end of your intestine comes out into the bag, and it's like a little poo bag, basically. As you can imagine, for a teenager, it's not a fun look to be carrying around.
Ladies,
But
excuse me while I
yeah,
go
it's like,
change my
ladies.
colostomy bag.
Oh yeah, it's real sexy.
It's great for self-confidence for a teenager, I can imagine.
Absolutely. Quietus86 says, I have a friend with one of those bags. Yep. It's it's an interesting thing to have. I was quite lucky. It's not always the case that you're able to have it reversed. So they do a little they like fold. It's getting very graphic. I don't apologize for that fact at all.
No.
But yeah, what they do is they fold over the end of your small intestine and have what's called like a pouch, an internal pouch, and that replicates the function of a large intestine. And so the issues that I get at the moment are to do with that particular pouch. For a while, I had to be on antibiotics for a really long time, and I was getting some inflammation. Luckily, I've been off all medication since sort of the beginning of last year, so I'm like super happy about that.
Fuck yeah.
But,
oh, sorry. Dude, that
yeah,
makes me so happy, especially because, like, I mean, I have Dr. Rhino in my name. I have no medical training. I'm not an actual doctor, but I've a lot of members of my family are in the medical community, and I've picked up a lot of these like terms and come to understand certain things. And with something like what you're describing, my brain was going to everything that like my aunt would tell me about someone with a similar condition, and how that like the reason why you would have to be on antibiotics and all these things. So to be able to be in a position where you're now off those medications is fucking fantastic. So I'm like,
thanks, dude. Tell me about it. It's really great because like it's the first time in like 8 years I've been off all medication, and I'm like very happy about this fact. But yeah, so like one of the big reasons why I like talking about this is because of the awareness of it. Like, it's not a sexy thing to have to say like, oh yeah, sometimes I just shit a lot of blood. That's a thing that happens. And so it can be very difficult for people with the condition to talk about because it's not a sexy disease, basically. No. And so I try and talk about it as much as possible so that if anyone in the chat ever comes across someone who has the condition, they can point back to me and go, "Oh yeah, I know a guy who talks about having that. Oh, I kind of understand a little bit more what you're going through," and it makes the person that they've met who has the condition a little bit more comfortable and a bit more open to be able to like share their experience, and just makes their life a little bit easier. So yeah, it's kind of an awareness thing.
Yeah, and I know it's not the same thing, but yeah, I know relating to people is, and when you were talking about having UC, it's not the same thing, obviously, but I know someone from high school, and she had has Crohn's disease, which it's a gastrointestinal misfunction where I believe it's when the small intestine is not capable of handling the acid coming from the stomach, and it just erodes your small intestine, and it can lead to kind of see. Okay.
Yeah, I will actually say, so Crohn's is very related to colitis, because essentially Crohn's is colitis but worse. So essentially ulcerative colitis affects your large intestine, whereas Crohn's is kind of the same thing, only it affects everything in your digestive tract from your neck down.
Okay, because for her specifically, if I remembered correctly, it was stomach and small intestine were the spots. But then again, it wasn't like we were best buds and she shared everything with me, but we were in similar classes and we were friends, and I learned some of these things. So when I'm and I'm glad you're expanding my knowledge on this. I feel almost terrible for not having fully understood it, or maybe it's been so long that I forgot. But she her experiences and what she had to deal with, especially in high school, with something like that. When I heard you talking about your experiences, because I knew her, to reinforce your point, it helped me get a little bit more of an empathetic feeling, having experienced firsthand someone dealing with that. So One, makes us a more empathetic community, and two, it raises awareness on a insidious disease. Actually, please correct. Is it a disease? Is it a syndrome? Is it a genetic
So
like mutation?
no one, yeah, no one specifically knows where it comes from. As far as I'm aware, there are certain genetic markers which make you more predisposed to having it, but it always seems to require some sort of trigger. For me, it was several bouts of extremely bad food poisoning, and that was the thing that triggered it in me. However, stress seems to be a big one. I've got a good friend of mine who has the condition, and he caught it, or he got it, when he was planning his wedding. He was having a destination wedding, and the stress of that seemed to tip him over the edge.
I could see that.
But yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's a disease rather than a syndrome, and it's not something that anyone else you can't catch it.
Yeah.
From someone.
It's not a communicable disease. You
No,
can't shake hands
definitely
with Quipster and catch UC, guys.
No, not a thing.
So, along those lines, actually, you know, I love to do charity stuff, and you mentioned that there's a lot of stuff about UC as far as awareness, even full understanding of how the disease works. I'm sure there are many great organizations that fund or do research for UC. If you are ever going to do, because the very first thing that I ever messaged you about was you talking about, I think it was just do an AMA about DZTV on your Instagram stories. And I was like, any thoughts on DZTV doing a charity thing at some point in the future? And you're like, oh, you know, like maybe it's not a bad idea. If DZTV, like I encourage this, if DZTV rallies behind Quipster and you guys do a UC awareness like charity event, I want to contribute. I want to help. I want to donate a raffle prize or whatever you guys are doing. I want to be involved. So if that ever comes about,
Awesome.
Reach out to me. I will do whatever I can here on the American side of the pond to facilitate whatever you guys are working on. I love me a good cause. So let me help.
Absolutely, I will do that.
Perfect. So, not to keep interrupting you, but is there anything else that you want to mention about, like, specifically how this led you back or led you to Warhammer?
Yeah. So, going back on track with the story of
Yes.
it, I sort of the end of 2018, I was, not in a good place health-wise. I was not feeling good. I was very fatigued, and I was just like, as bad as it is to say, I was getting sick of playing Metal Gear Solid 5. I love that game, but playing it every day, you're just like, oh, I just need something else, anything else. And so I realized, I used to paint quite a lot. I wonder what's happening in Games Workshop these days. So I just had a quick look on the website, and I was like, oh my god, Custodes are a thing. So I immediately dropped like £400 when I went to into a local Games Workshop, and I was just like, this is a thing I can be doing while I'm just sitting there and being quite ill. And it was very meditative, and it was very good, and especially because like after a few hours, you can look back on your progress and go, that's a thing I did, like there on the table. I painted that thing, and it gives you that progression. It gives you that sort of satisfaction. That's really nice. And ever since then, it's just been a wild journey in the hobby for me personally, just because I gained 5,000 followers on Instagram last year. I've gained another almost 3,000 this year so far.
My God.
I've met every yeah, it's crazy. I've met basically every big Warhammer YouTuber. They're either friends with mine or I know them now. Like, I am involved in making loads of content. I started a now very successful podcast with my Warhammer friends. Like, the hobby lends itself to that kind of journey because it can be all-encompassing, and the community is so nice that it can just pull you in. And I don't know if this is even a proper concept, but like when you find a community and it accepts you so hard that you just end up doing a whole bunch of stuff with it,
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I totally get that because I started 100% from like with at least the painting side. Lore wise, I'd been the guy who, like, while working, I'd be like, oh yeah, Warhammer's a thing. I'll go listen to lore YouTube videos while I'm doing my job or, playing video games or something. That was the most connection I had to it since I read that one Ultramarines omnibus when I was a teenager. And then a year ago, I start getting into painting for similar reasons. The job I had previously had was such a huge stressor on me that I had basically lost the ability to eat, because anything I would eat I would throw up, and I would I would go like a couple days without being able to eat, and then I'd eat over the weekend. I'd be okay, but the job was so stressful that I needed something to distract myself, and I ended up finding painting Warhammer models because I played a few games on Tabletop Simulator. I'm like, okay, this is cool, but I want these models. And Warhammer was, like you said, it's very meditative. It helps you get out of your mind, and especially if, in my case, a lot of my anxiety was coming from shortcomings or perceived shortcomings in my position due to lack of knowledge and lack of understanding because bad training. But
Yeah.
but with painting models, it is so amazing to be able to look at what you painted and be like, okay, I know where I started and I can visibly see progress. It's nice to have something that, in a world where things are a lot more esoteric, especially in most career fields, being able to look at a model and be like, okay, this model is done. I have finished this. And then you can put it down and move on to the next one. And also being able to see that progress, to like see a visible physical indication of what you have achieved. And as far as to just round things off into, because we've been dancing in and out of the play aspect of the game. You've already touched on the start collecting and different sets that you can get that include the rule books, being able to start playing the game. The only other tips that I would give in this field for new players, there are free resources for like building your lists. Battlescribe is amazing. Wahapedia, if you need to quickly look up a stratagem or a tool or something, Wahapedia is a great way to just like quickly go look up that rule. What else? Play simplified matches, like we were talking about, like, like one unit versus one unit. Just figure that out. Just get that unit down, add another unit once you feel comfortable, then add another, and all of a sudden you're up to 500 points. Don't let other people discourage you based on your lack of experience, and avoid people like that as a general rule.
Yes. I think building a community around yourself for your hobby is kind of the most important thing you can do. Like finding some like-minded friends, basically. I was very lucky in that when I got back into the hobby, all my school friends used to play. And so I put them all in a WhatsApp group. I was like, hey guys, I'm getting back into Warhammer. Who wants to join me? Every single one of them said yes. And so like we would have these little intro games around my friend Lewis's house, kind of thing. So I was very lucky for that. But also, one of the things I think can be quite intimidating for a new person is the fact that the rules are called rules, which I think in most people implies that you must use all of them because they are the rules, not the guidelines as such. And I think that's something we really need to start emphasizing as a community. Like the fact that when you play your first game, don't use strats, don't use chapter tactics, don't use anything that's not on the profile, basically.
Yeah.
Don't bother with all the other special rules because you don't need them. You're learning like the core rule set.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about, if you're playing Space Marines, you don't need to worry about what doctrine you're in. You don't need to worry about getting that extra attack on the charge or being charged. That comes later. Just use that stat block. Use the movement, the strength, weapon and ballistic skill. Use your weapon. Like, get familiar with those things, then add the next element, even on that data sheet. Absolutely.
Precisely. And this is, I'm actually going to make a video on this quite soon after I finish the Black Templar tutorial. And it's essentially going to be, this is the progression at which you should learn the rules. So start with data sheets, then this special rule, then chapter tactics, then strats. It's just sort of outlining that process because I've not really ever seen that anywhere.
Me neither. And how perfect that that is something that you are working on when now we will have something to point people to as like this perfectly encompasses the like getting truly started in this game, not the lofty like, okay guys, I'm getting started in Warhammer, so here's my 500 point fully painted based, and you know, like I know every stratagem for my faction, I have all my books. Like you don't need all that to start. In fact, it's you definitely don't want all of that to start, because when I started trying to do that, I did not start the way that we are discussing. I tried to learn everything at once, and I was trying to use stratagems and play games with too many models, and I'd be like, oh crap, I forgot to do this, or I forgot to use my psychic power here, and it's not fun because you're overcomplicating it for yourself.
Yes, exactly. It's about having those little baby steps. And to be honest, again, this kind of relates back to, you know, being part of the community. Don't be afraid to take a step back, find someone who you like respect or whose work you follow on Instagram. Just ask them questions. Just be like, hey man, I saw that you played this game the other day. I'm just getting into the game. What would you recommend? I get these messages all the time. People just being like, I'm local to London. I used to play the game as a kid. How do I get back into it? And I just say to them, like, pick a faction you like, get the rule book, get your codex, and contact the London Wargaming Guild and pick yourself up a game. That's just it. And actually, incidentally, I would, if you are first getting into the game, I would always actually suggest getting the rule book and the codex for your faction. And it's not just specifically for the rules. One thing Games Workshop really tries to like hammer into the rule set is the fact that the rules need to make narrative sense for the army. So if you understand the narrative of the army that you're playing, you can understand, oh, that's why doctrines are a thing. That's why this character has these rules. And it gives you like a memory hook so that you can actually contextualize the rules, and they're not this sort of like abstract thing of these models do these things because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. And it does help build out that larger sense of narrative. If like Ragnar Blackmane, the fact that he doesn't just have a power sword or a chainsword, excuse me, he has a very specific chainsword. That might draw your interest, be like, you know, this model's really cool. That sword sounds really badass. Why does he have this sword? And then you go read a book or you go watch a YouTube video on it and learn more, get more invested in the shared narrative of the 40K universe.
Precisely. Yeah. I mean, also on a more logistical standpoint as well, I would say get the codex and the rulebook specifically, because if you have, say, Battlescribe, for example, Battlescribe is a fantastic tool, but doing this every single time you want to find a single rule is the biggest pain in the ass ever.
That is
just
true.
Do yourself a favor. Just like, honestly, you know what? Give me 1 second. I'm going to grab something.
And also, while he's away, quick context: Battlescribe is a list builder. I really like using it for building my lists, and you can at a glance hover over and look at the stat blocks. But I actually print my Battlescribe lists out just so I can see the stat blocks really quickly.
That is a great shout.
Some people also will do. I knew one guy who did he'd do high res scans of the pages with the stat blocks from his core book, and then cut them out, laminate them, and he had them as flashcards, so he could like.
Great idea. But again, it goes back to having the physical copy actually like is very useful. And the best example I can give you is this is my Custodes codex. And in the top here, I have little things attached to the pages that tell me where my stratagems are, where my abilities are. Oh snap! I love it. So that if ever I'm looking for anything, I can be like, right, where are the strats? That's where the thing is. and it's right there.
And
I don't have to worry about. I don't have to flick through the thing.
and especially when you're getting started, like the Custodes book is actually a great example of this. They released a lot of stuff in For the Greater Good, Psychic Awakening book. So there is a second book that has additional Custodes stuff, but that does not mean that if you want to play Custodes that you have to go and buy every single book. You can play Custodes, especially in just a for fun game with your friends. You can play it right here. This is all you need. And again, like we were discussing, like Battlescribe for lists and stuff. It has all of that additional information in it. So you might be a little confused, like, why is it talking about like picking a shield host for my Custodes? Like, why does this have an impact? Well, because in the Psychic Awakening book, each of the shield hosts, like the Shadow Keepers or the Solar Watch, got a specific extra, like a chapter bonus, and then also like a Warlord trait and a specific stratagem or thing that they could use.
Yeah,
like Dreadhost has one that they can
and, something else, a relic.
Yes, relic. That I don't know why I keep forgetting relics, but the point being is that you don't necessarily need all the books, but the core book for the codex for your faction is always a good one to have. Always.
Yes.
You don't
Absolutely.
You don't necessarily need every book. Like for example, AdMech right now. If you were really interested in playing AdMech, you'd have to buy 3 books to have all of the Armies of Renown and the core book to be able to have everything for that faction. If you were going to play in a tournament, that might be important because you have to actually, can you explain, is that required? Like you have to have your physical books with you?
Yes, you do. And the very specific reason for that is so people don't cheat.
Yes. You can't say, "Oh, no, I got a stratagem. Lets me do this thing."
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that's just kind of a good guideline for good sportsmanship in the hobby in general. Just like be open to the fact that not everyone knows all of the rules for everything. So if someone says to you, "Oh, do you mind if I see that rule?" Say, "Yes, absolutely. Here it is." Like, don't be cagey.
Yeah, the only reason why you would be, I would assume someone would be cagey is if they're trying to hide something. Like I watched a guy, and this isn't any sort of dig on this particular individual at my local game store, but I was watching him play a game.
It is drama. Do it.
And he was playing orcs, and he kept saying like, "Oh, I've got a stratagem that lets me do this," and his opponent said like, "Oh, okay, cool. Can I see the codex? Like, show me in the codex. Like, I want to know more about this." And he kept saying, "Oh, look, okay, I'll go get it." And he'd like sit there and he'd like flip through the codex, or he'd flip through his stratagem cards over and over and over again. He's like, "Well, I can't find it, but I'm sure I can do this." And he's like, "Dude, if you can't show me, I can't like let you do that." So it's one, it's good sportsmanship. 2, it's just like think of if the role was flipped. If Quipster and I are playing and he did something that I'm like, "Oh, Dib, like, can you actually do that? Can you show me that?" And he says, "Oh yeah, sure." Shouldn't I be reciprocating that? Isn't that like the kind of behavior we would want to exemplify in each other? Because ultimately, this is a game. No need to be a tryhard or a cheating tryhard in this case.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that because I have a really good example of that, and it was really funny at the time. Total name drop as well. I was filming, I think it was my first bat rep that I'd done with Winters, SEO, over on his channel. I think this first one was actually for DZTV. And basically what happened was he actually has a Custodes army. So he's going into it thinking he knows how to play Custodes. What he doesn't realize is that up to that point, I had played 50 games with the same Custodes list. So I know Custodes backwards and forwards. Like, I know everything in the Codex off by heart. And there's a strat, which means that you can do a deep strike 3 inches away from an enemy unit.
Yes,
and it's the most funny thing ever.
The Vixillus Praetor teleport Homer. Yes. Duck Guts is super into that strat too.
it's such a good strat. But so basically, I dropped 9 Alaris Terminators right next to his Blightlord Terminators, and I was just like, right, I'm about to fuck up your day.
That's
And he was just like, wait. And he looked at me and he was like, there's no way you can do that. Let me see that card. So I showed him the strat. And he read it. He's just looking at it intently, reading it for a second, looked up, looked me dead in the eyes, and just said, you motherfucker. And I was just like, yep, this is happening. And I just obliterated his Blightlord Terminators.
Oh, that's so tasty.
I will say, that kind of thing is a bit of a gotcha moment.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize he didn't know that strat existed. And because I thought he played Custodes, normally it would be the case that I would say to an opponent, look, I have this strat, it does this. Like, especially in a casual game, I will always say that. Just because, like, I don't want to just obliterate half of someone's army and then just have like a really bad time as a result.
Yeah, and I'm really
but-
glad you're touching on these details as to when playing. Here is how you play good with a capital G, like how you play as a good player. I have, for one, also feel it is casual, especially in matched play. I would still do this if I ever played in a tournament, but telling your opponent, like, hey, I'm going to be playing Custodes. My list, you will probably see me potentially utilize these stratagems that do this. And I'm telling you this to avoid gotcha moments, because it never feels good to be on the receiving end of a gotcha moment. And by extension, my empathetic self knows that I would also not feel good causing a gotcha moment. When you see that look on someone's face, like they made a decision that if they had because you can't expect, like, I can't expect Quipster to know every single stratagem, every single ability, every single relic that is in all 18 factions. And that, again, is not including all of the individual codexes for sub factions. Like, there's the Space Marine Codex. Hold on. Because you have the General Space Marine Codex that has information on most of these, right? Well, guess what? There's also a Dark Angels Codex with specific stuff for the Dark Angels. I can't expect him to know everything out of these books, in addition to everything else. So it's only fair that we share information on what we are most likely to use in order to give the perception of us both working from a world of pure knowledge of both armies.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, this kind of goes back to this point of, having a hobby group and the idea of community, because the fact is, if you're a dick to play against, people won't want to play against you. And you'll never get games. It's really as simple as that. Like, be nice to the people you play with, be open, and don't be an asshole.
And word does get around thanks to social media. Like, you're like, okay, well, this group doesn't want to play with me anymore, because you said in London you've got a giant, like, cornucopia of different clubs you can play with. You do have the big guild. I mean, if word gets around in that one guild, that's like 2,000 people that won't play with you, because everyone, it's a game. People want to have fun playing a game. So if you're not fun to play with, they won't play with you. Well, and that's like half of London that won't play with you.
I mean, this is a thing. There's a video that kind of went viral. I think it was sort of in 2019 sometime, that Stephen Box made over at Vanguard Tactics. I don't know if you've seen this one. It's just called My Opponent at the London Grand Tournament. Now, the London Grand Tournament, for those who don't know, is the probably second biggest Warhammer tournament in the world. I think it's like 500 people. And Stephen Box, it's massive. I'm going this year. It's gonna be sick. I'll take all the pictures. Don't worry.
Please do.
But so Stephen Box got put up against this guy, and when people saw that he was paired against this guy, everyone came up to him and said, "Hey man, like, he does some pretty crafty shit. Like, he's not nice to play against. Like, if you need to drop out, like, then just do it." And he eventually, like, said, okay, right, I'm going to play this game, but if I'm going to play this game, I want to judge there at all times. And the organizers agreed. And so he played this game with the judge there, and this guy he was playing against cheated relentlessly. He was making up stratagems that didn't exist. He was doing things that you make up rules that didn't exist. He was just cheating in every conceivable way.
Right in front of a judge.
And right in front of the judge. And then, and this is something that Steve really highlighted in this video, Steve has a very high-level competitive sports background. And it is, and I fenced at uni as well as captured the team. And it is one of those things that you do not argue with the ref. Full stop. The word of the ref is God. Like, that is it. But this guy was arguing with the TO that was there. And it's just ridiculous. A ridiculous situation. And the interesting thing of when Steve posted that video, every single person named, because Steve didn't name the guy in the video. He didn't say who it was, but every single person in the comments did. They said, I know who that is. It's this guy. If you have that kind of reputation, no one is going to play you. And to be named and shamed like that in a video that went viral, you're never going to play Warhammer again in England. No one's going to want to play you.
And it's so terrible that, I mean, and this goes for games, life in general. Like, from my perspective, as a young kid, I played Magic the Gathering against my brothers. I will freely admit that I was a little shit and I would make up some rule. And because I was the slightly older brother, they assumed I knew more than them about the game. They are in a position to beat me. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I do this special rule that lets me play this card that blows up your shit. And I win because I didn't want to lose to my younger brothers. Even at that age, I recognized how hollow a victory that is. So anybody who aim bots in a video game, it's like, why? This isn't fun. There's no challenge here. In the same way, like in Warhammer, you're rolling your dice. Like the guy who recently at like the Vegas Open or whatever that was rolling his dice behind terrain. And picking them up really fast and saying like 6 hits. Like if you just want to win,
roll 5 dice. How do you got 6 hits? Yeah,
it's like why do you even play the game?
Yeah,
if you're bent on winning, like why are you playing the game at all?
Costs like that. What's the point? I couldn't agree more.
It's so hollow.
Interestingly, actually, this has come up in the comments. Too Many Spruce has just said, I'm going this year. It's my first tournament. I'm absolutely terrified I'm going to mess it up. I just want to have a good time and meet people. So I would say to that specifically, the fact that you're saying to yourself, I am terrified that I'm going to mess up, means that you're going to have a good time. Because you are cognizant of the fact that you are in an environment with other people and you don't want to screw it. Like, you don't want to be an asshole, basically. So to Too Many Spruce specifically, the fact that you're thinking about it means that you're going to be fine. So don't worry about it.
And also, even more so, that he's going to have a good time, is that the second part of that statement, that I am here to have a good time and make friends. Those are the goals. And if you're going to a tournament, especially like if you're going to, like you just said, the second biggest tournament in the world, and it's your first tournament, setting unreasonable expectations for yourself, like, I'm going to win this thing, and I'm going to win Best Painted Army, and I'm going to win Best in Faction. I'm going to do all this stuff, like, maybe a bit unrealistic. It's good to have aspirations, but let's temper our expectations. You're going to have some of the best players in the world there, but what you can control and what you can ensure is that I would go into a tournament saying, I want to win one game, or I want to try to win one game. That is my personal goal for this tournament, and I'm going to be the best opponent for all the people I play against. I'm going to be the best opponent. I'm going to be the one that people will be like talking about after the game, when they'll be like, oh dude, I was up against Quipster. That guy, like, before the game, shook my hand, said hello. We chatted while we set up. He complimented my paint jobs, and we talked about lore, and then we did this and this and this, and he told me about his stratagems. What a nice guy. I had so much fun. That's what I want.
genuinely like the best prize I could possibly ever get at a competition is best sportsman.
That's a
Like,
thing.
or most sporting. Yeah, most sporting. It's a thing.
Oh,
Yeah, totally a thing. Like this is the one thing I think when we talk about the competitive scene specifically that I think we do really need to mention. Sometimes I think a lot of people out there, they look at the competitive scene and they go, "Oh, it's just there's a lot of win at all cost players." Like, "Oh, look at that Stephen Box video." Like, it's all like that. 99.9% of people that go to competitions love the lore of their faction. They love most of them really enjoy the hobby, and they will take pride in the faction that they're playing, and they're nice guys. It's a really nice community, and you will more than likely, like, out of 100 games, you'll meet one asshole. That's it.
and yeah, because like you said, everyone decides that we're not going to play against these jerks. The jerks eventually get weeded out because they realize like no one wants to play against them. So like when Steven goes up against this guy where people are like, dude, like this guy cheats, like you may as well just like save yourself the hassle and the anguish, just like call the game, but that gives the guy a win. So Steven's like, no, I'm gonna beat this guy and I'm gonna do it in a way that ensures like there's no argument one way or the other, because I'm sure Steven beat the pants off the guy. But
yes.
Yeah, of course. So Steven beats this guy. He does so in a manner that it cannot be contested. And he does not let this guy's bullying ways carry him through to victory. Because if, you develop this reputation where people are like, I'd rather just concede than play this game against you, then the guys that's awarding that behavior. But you get folks like Steven that stand up, or another guy in this painting community tells the story about, his name's Ramius. He's another painter. When he was manager at a GW store in the Northeast of the US, there was a guy who went and absolutely demolished a kid who was literally playing his very first game. Just like curb stomped this child. And he's like, all right, I'll play against you next. And he beat the pants off this guy so bad and then said like, that's how it feels for what you just did to that kid. And the guy like never came back to the store after that. He was so embarrassed for getting his butt kicked like that he never came back, and good riddance. So stand up to the bullies, y'all, but keep a judge there.
But I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is just the community's full of nice people. Be one of them.
Yeah, you want to talk about nice people. You yourself, like I reached out to you and said like, hey dude, I do a charity stream once a month. Would you like to be a guest? And boy, howdy, that conversation was an absolute shit show from the beginning, but it was a lot of fun. And not only did you agree to do it in the first place, somebody that you've never interacted with other than a few Instagram messages back and forth, but you agreed to come back and chat with me now for like 3 hours on this subject. So you guys want to know, like, that's the amount of natural support members of this community have for each other. And yeah, Quipster's kind of like, in my opinion, like way up there is kind of like that creme de la creme of members of this community, but still it speaks for all of us that people step up, we support each other, we help each other. I've got people donating tons of prizes for, September's charity raffle. We gave away in June like $3,500 US worth of prizes, and September's shaping up to be like another like 2,000 or 3,000. So even in that respect, the generosity of this community for charity, let alone for helping each other learn and grow and just have a good time with Warhammer, it's unlimited. So
it never ceases to amaze me.
And I want to keep talking about this, so I might have to insist that, a couple months down the line or whenever your schedule, like, and I don't even think we're going to do, you and I don't think we even need stuff like this anymore. We're just going to talk, and I think that we're going to have a good time about it. But I think I will have to have you on again if you would be willing to at some point in the future. Please don't feel the need to commit on camera. You can message me afterwards and be like, dude, hell no.
I'll commit on camera. Like, I'm happy to come back.
Sweet. Because I also want to get some sort of verbal confirmation from you that you will attempt to, if it is safe to travel, get Winters and get the rest of DZTV. I need you guys to come to Chicago. I need you guys to be at Adepticon, and I want to take you all out for pizza and hot dogs and then play games against you, and it is going to be awesome. That is my new like hobby goal is to play Custodes versus Custodes with you, and then take my custom chapter against Winters, 13th Legion. So I there's all these games I want to play, and that's my new hobby goal. So
that is not even a hard sell. Like Winters and Liam, Winters especially has been talking about going out and internationally doing competitions and meeting people. So yeah, I mean, basically once COVID is over, like, yeah, fuck yeah, we'll do that.
Perfect.
Basically.
Because I was informed that Adepticon, I love how I was like wrapping this up, but there's one thing I want to mention about Adepticon. They apparently do this thing that it is a foursome 4,000 point tournament where all 4 members of the team make a 1,000 point list. Now you can make them all the same faction, or you can make it a big soup list, but each of you is responsible for 1,000 points of that army. You paint it, and obviously you would come up as a team, like some sort of cohesive basing structure and all this other stuff for the painting. But you are teamed up in pairs of 2 during the tournament. So you have to devise a 4,000 point list where each 1,000 points works well with any one of the other 1,000 point lists, because you will play 3 games where each of you are teamed up with one of the other members. So that's how the tournament works. It's 2v2, but each time your partner is different amongst your foursome.
Interesting.
And
so I guess you'd have to choose like a super faction, like you'd all have to be Chaos, or you'd all have to be Imperium.
Or I mean, or you could try. I mean, I wanted to do something where it was like, before I realized that they would all be switched up, I'd be like, okay, I get someone to bring like Krieg and artillery, and then I bring Custodes and just sit them in the middle of the board, and the Krieg just blows them all to hell. But then again, like that might work in that one situation, but if I get paired with someone else, it's Custodes and more Custodes, and there's no synergy there in comparison to the opponent's army. So it's a great little mind game, and I'd love to see like the DZTV team compete in that, or if you need a 4th, I'll be the 4th member of that team. I'd be more than happy to do 1,000 points for that. Obviously, with this Adepticon being in March, that's a bit of a short sell as far as like time to work on it, and I couldn't commit to doing something like that, but you guys could potentially.
Yeah.
If not for 2023. But that's a tournament.
2023 is looking quite good. That might be a doable thing.
That'd be really cool.
So I've already talked to is this a secret? I don't know if this is a secret. Whatever. She's never going to see this. So Katie from Tabletop Tactics. Basically I said to her, like, when her and Lawrence go out to the LVO, Las Vegas Open, she was just like, oh, why don't you come too? And I was like, yeah, fuck it, of course I'll come too. So yeah, whenever they end up at the LVO, I'll probably also be there too. So that
sweet.
Will be
that is a goal for me one day, to go to the Las Vegas Open. But I want to actually get more than, I've only played 5 tabletop games in my life. Over this 1 year, I've played 5 games in person, all of which have only been 500 points. So I've yet to play a 2,000 point game, so I need to be playing more. But when I do show up to play, I'm going to be the guy showing up with, more than 2,000 points of completely painted and based models, and that's equally as important to me. So
I know exactly
with plans for the future set in stone, and we will have to discuss more about Adepticon in 2023, or just another episode of the podcast maybe. But thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with us. Normally we would do a raid, but I have to actually just cut this thing off now because I have a meeting in about 10 minutes for work. But guys, can we get some hype in the chat? Thank you, Quipster, so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It was a slog of a chat, I'm sure. But
not at all.
I had so much fun doing this. This podcast thing, the folks like yourself with your fireside chats and the Conclave podcast have really inspired me to give, for what my few cents on the subject are worth, give it a fair shake. So if folks are interested in watching this video again, it'll be available exclusively on Patreon, because that's where Quipster belongs, behind an exclusive wall, because boy, this guy's pure gold. So thank you all ever so much, and we'll be seeing you on Friday during regular streaming hours. So thanks everybody, and have a great day. Bye-bye.